Yo, yo. So, right. So, a little bit different today. There is a 1.5 hour interview with Talkative Try. I have never watched him. I've seen his name floating around in the PoE space, but I've never actually watched a video of him. So we will watch that interview first, and then we'll get back to Oblivion. So it's gonna probably be like 2 hours of PoE 2, and then Oblivion. Maybe more than 2 hours, but we'll see. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna get a shake here in a second, but Nina's making it.
Hey,
So.
Exiles, welcome to another episode of the Still Sane podcast. Today, I am joined
What's
by the
a
game
podcast?
director on Path of Exile 2 and Grinding Your Games co-founder, Jonathan Rogers. First of all, man, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Certainly, had a good sleep. I'm happy. I'm ready to roll.
Just my shake. Yeah, the reason she doesn't come in like yesterday is because she's not wearing clothes. And as much as you guys would like that would A, get me banned, and B, I would not like it. So yeah, you don't get to see that, fuckers.
Well, that's awesome to hear, and I'm glad you're not feeling tired today. You got some good rest last night. All right, kids and wife not keeping you up or anything. So I gotta ask, I'm curious. Right now, we have obviously patches coming out consistently for 0.2.0 for PoE 2. We have the return of Zana in Path of Exile 1. We have the League releasing on June 13th. What are the vibes right now, like at Grinding Gear Games, compared to, let's say, the launch of 0.2.0 Dawn of the Hunt? How you feeling?
I mean, I would say definitely things are definitely a lot happier than they were back then. But to be honest, it's kind of like the people who feel the pain are not like, when obviously, there's a lot of people who are unhappy and not necessarily like most of the team, right? Because I mean, most of the team consists of, like you've got artists and sound designers, everything like that. I mean, what they see is like, everyone in love with the stuff that they're making. So like in terms of I guess the people who people are mad at when people are mad are like the kind of core group of like 5 people who are kind of doing balance decisions. And so those are the people who kind of feel the pain. The rest of the team's kind of fine and chill, and it's all good. They're happy. But there's certainly a lot of excitement for for how things are going. And I guess one of the nice things now is we kind of feel like we're finally getting our feet in terms of being able to develop both games simultaneously. Like we had a lot of trouble for a long time there, actually kind of balancing that. And it's like now we're finally kind of rolling, like things are working out. Like I think we sort of found the way that we can make this sustainable. Like I sort of hesitate to say that we're like quite at that point just yet, because like we're still obviously in the early phases. But if we can be launching a PoE 1 expansion, and if we can also at the same time be creating PoE 2 patches, I think that means we're kind of in a good place. There's always going to be some level of like intermixing and kind of things that go on there, but I think that we're in a much better place than what we were before, and that means that like we're sort of ready now to be like, okay, we're actually getting the way we're doing development in a better place. So I mean, just to sort of talk about this, I mean, I was going to say this at the start of the the live stream for PoE 1, but I suppose I might as well just say it now. So basically, like in the past, well, not in the distant past, we always had like the deadline is locked, the features are not, right? Like that's the way that that we want things to be. And the reason why you do that is because you can't lock both, right? You can't say this is the time and these are the features there will be, right? Because there's always development, things happen, right?
Yes.
So effectively, if you want to lock the features, you can't lock the date, and if you want to lock the date, you can't lock the features. And so basically, we in the further go past were always locking dates, but then like as we sort of had PoE 2 in development, we started to get to a point where we were locking features instead. And I think honestly that kind of wasn't the best. It kind of means that you're in a situation where when dates aren't predictable, like players don't know what's going on, and also you can't communicate with the players about when things are going to happen. because because we don't know, right? It's like, well, the feature has to happen. The Huntress has to make it in. We don't know when it's going to be ready. We can't announce the date until the point where we know that that's happening, right? All I can do is give a vague estimate. So now, and I think this is going to be much healthier for PoE1 as well. We're locking dates. We know when things are going to be. If something doesn't get done, we just won't put it in. We'll put it in the next one. So I think that's a much better way.
That sounds a little scary, right? Because what if it's the feature that really makes or breaks stuff, right? Like if you have a season and you lock the date, which is fine, I guess, but then let's say the big seasonal feature or whatever, the really big one doesn't get done, then isn't it just gonna suck? Like, it's kind of gonna be D4, right? Where it says, well, there's a game, but there's not a lot of features.
Way of doing development. So what that means is, we've got the PoE1 release coming up, that's in June. And then, we'll have the PoE2 release 2 months after that. So 4 months from one to the other. But then we know we're locking in already. Like there'll be another PoE1 release 4 months after the PoE1 release that we have, right? That'll be locked in. And then we'll have another PoE2 release 4 months after that in December, right? So we're basically saying we're doing 4 months. It's going to be consistent. It's going to always be the case. We don't want to have this kind of uncertainty around this anymore. And the other thing that locking dates does is it kind of does act as a forcing function of you actually do need to to make sure you're actually shipping something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a like.
I can see the deadline argument, right? Like you have a deadline, you can't just extend it, right? So that's gonna light a fire under your ass, right? Like you have to get it done, but.
Like a very important element of that. So effectively like the change in development model there, like back to locking dates, I think is just going to be way better.
I think a lot of Path of Exile players are going to appreciate that. And man, you answered both of my follow-ups with that. People are very excited to hear 4 months leave.
Oh, shit,
I do hear a little bit of an echo, Jonathan. I just want to point that out right now.
Okay, yeah. Maybe you need to go down a little.
Just because everybody's going to hear it just a little bit more.
Yeah, can you lower his volume down a little? Sweet. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's extremely exciting. Like people have been yearning for the 4-month cycles again instead of the almost year long. It didn't make it to the meme. Did you guys consider like just extending it like 1 more month just for the meme?
No.
But the one no.
No. Look, our priority has just been like, no, we need to get a PoE1 expansion out ASAP, right? Like we really want to make sure we're getting that as soon as possible.
And you broke glass in case of emergency. You were like, all right, Zana, it's time for you to come back. All right, here we go. Right? You knew everybody would love it. So. All right. Well, that was the only Path of Exile one related real question I had. Thanks so much for answering it right off the top. We'll get right into the Path of Exile 2 stuff because all that is super exciting. But Path of Exile 2, man, it's been out since December. Okay, so we're at about 6 months at this point. I'm really curious about some of the stats around this. We obviously see numbers related to Steam, right? We almost hit 600,000 concurrents on Steam. I'm curious, though, because I'm one of the maybe dozens, correct me if I'm wrong, of people who play on the standalone. And then we obviously have the console audience as well. What has been like the numbers and reception on those platforms?
Is he allowed to say that?
Is it similar or much smaller?
So it is smaller, but it's not that much smaller. So effectively, I think we had around... I think the concurrency for 010 was something like 890 or something like that, like by the time for all the people on that one. So that's kind of where you sort of ended up. Console's definitely smaller, and I was actually talking about this recently because I was kind of wondering like why so console I think is now about okay, well, there's another story behind this, but I think it's somewhere between 15 and 20. The answer to why we don't know the exact number is kind of another story, but that's a side note. But yeah, it's sort of between 15 to 20, and I think it could be larger. I sort of have a feeling that like console players are not as into early access as PC players are, so I think that could be an element. So we'll see about that. But yeah, effectively we sort of had about like 890-ish, something like that around 010. And then for 020, I was kind of like, okay, you're always going to get a first launch dip. Like
when he says 890, does he mean 80 to 90, or does he mean 890?
Compared to the first launch, right? So like it was going to go down. So my estimate was that we were going to have is around 500,000 on launch concurrents, and we ended up getting about 485. So it was like pretty close to what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like that was pretty much around what I was expecting. So like I was pretty happy with that. So that's kind of where we ended up with that stuff. Now, obviously the numbers will be larger when we actually get in full release, and then there'll come a point where, like, instead of shrinking each launch, you'll be growing each launch. It's kind of like changes, how these things work. Well, assuming we're doing a good job anyway. That's sort of what I imagine to happen. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens with 030. I've got my predictions, but we'll see we'll see how things work.
Okay.
I didn't get much out of what you just said.
I'm curious. I am not able to pay attention to a lot of the reception in the other realms, of course, because we have US and Europe and Korea on one realm, and then we have the Chinese realms. How has the reception been like in China? Because PoE2 Early Access came out over there too, yeah, right?
No, it actually didn't. So they're not out there yet. So there's a lot of people in China who are just playing on the international servers because they're just they use a VPN or something like that. But actually it's not actually officially out there yet. So we're actually it won't be too far away. I can't give you a date. Not that it necessarily matters to you per se, but for all the people in China, it obviously matters a lot. But it is going to be coming. It's not too much further away. I'm actually going to be taking a trip to China in a few weeks. We're going to chat to some of the players there. And have a chat, and so hopefully they'll be pretty interested to see when that release is going to be coming out.
Right? Is it going to be paid like our version, or is it going to release directly?
It'll be exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. The price will be a bit different, because different markets have different prices. But I thought, it's funny because Tencent were ultra keen for it to be free there, because they're like, oh, like in China people don't pay to play games. And I'm kind of like, look, it would be so unfair to the rest of the world if in China it was free and in the rest of the world it wasn't for this period. So basically I was like, okay, it just has to be it has to be pay to play. As I said, the pricing will vary a little bit.
Okay, that's it. I had absolutely no idea. Okay, well, cool to learn. That'll be interesting to see what the reception is like over there. Okay, awesome note.
China doesn't like pay to play.
Here's another kind of statistical question for you. I'm really keen on all this. So recently you guys have been sharing a bunch of stats to do with the game, such as volatile plants, which are totally 95% of my deaths. Okay, they're apparently 50% of all end game deaths in the end game, and then 1/3 of maps are hitting grotto. I'm curious, what are there any other surprising stats like that, and are you using these stats
It is fucking wild that those shitty plants are 50% of the overall end game death. That is insane, and they suck. That is so wild.
in some surprising ways? I'd be awesome. I'd love to learn some about that.
So we traditionally have actually not been a very data-driven company. We're more about just play the game and see what it's like. But recently, we did actually get a data person. They're really, really great. They play PoE, so they know what they're looking for. Because this is always the worry I had, getting data people. It's they're not going to really know what they're doing and stuff. So this data person's really, really good. So we're getting stats like this. Now, I have to say, we could be getting a lot more about that, but stuff like the volatile plants thing was ridiculous. But I don't think I've got anything else to really talk to you about right now. If there's anything really surprising, we probably will make a post about it, because that one was crazy. But it's honestly, I'm honestly shocked that we didn't look at that sooner. It's kind of crazy that that we let that go on for as long as it did. We checked ages ago, back in 010 days, there were things that we checked, but it was really only surprisingly recently they're hang on a second, what is actually killing people? Let's actually find that out, because it seems silly that we wouldn't have looked at that, but when we saw that, it's geez, something needs to change about that. So it's funny because single things like that can have such an outsized impact on how the game plays.
Right.
I think it's mostly because it's just a bullshit kind of mechanic, because it's not an on-death effect, right? It kind of just happens, and then it chases you around, and depending on when you kill the mob, those plants can happen so long after you actually kill the mob. So you're done checking for on-death effects, you're kind of done everything, so now you're just looting, and then the plants have sprouted, and they come in and blow up. It takes so long from they start to they end. And also the fact that they will just fucking chase you forever. So if you're zooming, and they spawn, and they track onto you, And then, okay, now I'm stopped. And then they just come from fucking the other end of the map. Just, I don't know how far they actually go. My characters are not usually super zoomy, but I definitely have had them follow me for multiple screens, I want to say, but at least a good while.
And you know, and sometimes players don't even necessarily realize it themselves. They might just kind of be like, "Oh, I'm dying all the time," and they don't even connect the dots of the fact that it's like the same kind of mechanics that are killing you. So I mean, I had heard, for example, through the grapevine, like a bunch of people had said to me, "Oh, you know, chaos resistance is the amount of chaos res you can get is too low," and I'm kind of like, okay, well, you know, I mean, it is supposed to be harder to get. Like, there's various things like that, and it's like, okay, well, the actual problem isn't necessarily. I mean, maybe there still is a problem with that, but like the actual problem isn't necessarily that chaos res is too low. The problem is you've got this one frickin' mechanic that does chaos damage that's just like outsizedly killing people due to, you know, how powerful it is. So,
right.
you know,
it started with volatile crystals, and then it was volatile plants, and you guys did make changes. I think it was in the first 0.1 patch, 0.11. You gave it like an audio cue. I swear they killed me more. I don't know what to say about it, but so I'm interested to see what changes are upcoming in 0.21 related to them. So.
Right. Well, I mean, I want to, now that we've kind of gotten like an easy way to check this stuff, like we'll probably just have a check again about what's killing people and, you know, like check on that a bit more regularly. Like we should be doing more of that stuff. It's just that, like, you know, what I always worry about with data stuff is like, okay, if you just, if you go and just start looking at data without knowing what it is that you're looking for, sometimes you can kind of just like run into spurious things that just happen to have gone one way or the other. And it's like if you look at enough data, you'll find weird outliers sometimes, but maybe those aren't actually important. Like sometimes they can just be outliers. So that's why I'm always a little bit hesitant. So I sort of like to always tell people like, okay, you have to know before you check the numbers what number is going to make you make a decision about this, because like if you don't know that before you go in, then seeing the numbers shouldn't really be the thing that informs that. It should be that like, okay, if it's above this, it's bad. If it's below that, it's okay, kind of thing. You know, like that should be the stuff you should be knowing before you actually check, because otherwise it can influence you know, you can kind of like endlessly look at the stuff and it can drive you crazy.
Right.
So you know, yeah, that's kind of why I sort of view it that way. But yeah, you know, I mean, obviously here it was very important to see that, because you know that was a big one.
I know you said you don't have anything curious to share now, but are there any other like vectors you're looking at for alarming things besides stuff that's killing players? Just anything else in the game?
Well, the thing I'm doing a big data investigation for now actually is I need a better understanding. So like obviously there's got tons of people complaining about lag and disconnects and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like we've actually just like a couple of days ago, I haven't even had a chance to check it yet, made like a new data dashboard for seeing basically by data center and ISP where the problems are, because the problem is that if you look at things that as an absolute rate, it's like it's pretty minimal. But so what I suspected is like, oh, you know, if you're on this ISP, if you're at this particular data center, if you've got those kinds of things, like that's where you've got problems. So we need to start investigating those like individual cases and start kind of, you know, getting on ISP's cases and saying, hey, look, this router is constantly having the problem at this time, that kind of stuff. And so we need to start sort of getting into that kind of level of understanding. So we've started now like breaking down like when you log in, like
they're gonna come after the ISPs,
which ISP you're with. We look at what data center you're connecting to, and then we're like recording basically on each like pair of those, like data center and ISP, like what the disconnection rate is. If there's some kind of spike, we can look into it. So we're just sort of starting now to get into that kind of level of thinking about that stuff. And so I'm hoping that with that, we should be able to improve some of that stuff soon.
Since we're on it too, I was going to ask about this later. Is this related to the DDoS attacks and instability for European servers? Because I know a lot of people are still definitely talking about that.
Right. So that's definitely has been a problem. We have been improving the situation with that by like, you know, basically just working with the data centers and saying, hey, like, you know, what can you do? They've started adding a few extra things. I don't want to talk about too much about exactly what that is, because that obviously informs people to like, you know, how to potentially get past it.
Right.
But yeah, we've been doing a little bit of that. But I like I wouldn't say that the DDoSing is like most of the problem anymore. Like they still happen, right? Like that they definitely happen. But I wouldn't say that's like most of the problem. So I'd say that there are other issues. I mean, they're yeah, as I said, they still happen, but it really is. I think it really is more down now to looking at individual routes, like, you know, like working with the data centers to see, like, you know, what the pairing is like between these different networks and stuff like that. It kind of is like the devil's in the details with the stuff. And we previously didn't have as many data centers. When we started PoE2, we expanded into more data centers, you know, because we needed to, just for the scale that we were talking about. And you know, like the pairing for the other data centers, we worked for years with providers, like, complaining about individual routes and talking about individual things. And it's like, and so it kind of meant that got to a point of stability. Just as we've gone to new data centers, there's just teething problems of like, okay, like these particular things aren't working well. So yeah, we just need to do that work again and like go over it. But honestly, it's been so long since we actually were needing to worry about that stuff that I think we got out of practice on it. And so it's just something we need to get better at again, of just like working with all those providers.
That's good to hear. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. This is a little bit of a spicy topic that I'd like to chat about. Okay, so all these patches for 0.2 have been great. They're bringing quality of life changes to the game, new content to the game with the chase items that we're going to talk about pretty soon. There's one aspect of the game that has not been touched in any of these subsequent patches past like launch week, and that's character balance. And I know you've talked to other people in the past about the reason you're not doing character balance is because people had a very strong reaction during that initial start of early access. I'm curious if your thoughts on that might be changing, or if maybe there's a little bit of a different approach you can take to insert some changes to skills or the passive tree or other stuff during these patches, since like reception seems to be, I think, a lot better than initial launch. What are your thoughts on it?
Right. So if you're talking, there's two sides to this coin, right? There's the nerf and there's the buff.
Yes, exactly.
If you're talking about nerfs, you just can't do it, right? Like, you just actually can't. And the reason you can't, and it's like, even aside from whether or not people would be accepting of that, there is just this feeling you get when you go into a league and someone nerfed your build that you were playing already. You just feel like, my character is screwed. And like sure, you can respec, you can do these other things, but it still just has this feeling of like the game just like, you were standing on a chair and it just got knocked out from under you. And like, no matter, I think, what tools you give people for respecing, people just don't like sure, people can say, oh yeah, I guess I could respec, but like,
this has to be mid-league, right? Because he said going into a league and your build got ruined, so they can never nerf. I don't think that's what he meant. So I'm thinking this is, the question is, will GGG balance PoE mid-leagues? Yeah, okay, cool.
It just isn't great. It just feels bad.
I just got a little confused.
It just is something that, it isn't fun. Now, if you're talking about buffs, I actually am willing to do buffs mid-league. It is something we're willing to do. Now, the issue there is just literally the bandwidth for people who can do that kind of balance. Like, we really would need more of them in order to do character balance changes in the middle of the league. So effectively, the people who work on character balance are now working on PoE 1, right? There aren't many of them. There's really, I would say, 2 people who completely sight unseen can just make balance changes. There's a few more than that who can do it with like, a lot of checking and so on. And it's like, if those people are working on PoE 1, then we can't do like those kinds of easy things on PoE 2. So what that'll mean is, as soon as PoE 1 comes out, the expansion, immediately we're going to start doing patches for PoE 2, like even mid-league for some of that balance stuff. So like, you're going to see in 0.2.2, 0.2.3, you'll probably see like a bunch of that kind of stuff happening, because that's at that point we can start doing it. So yeah, like that
makes sense, right? Because you have PoE 2 league and you have PoE 1 league, right? And so whenever the league comes out, they can't do balance changes anyways. So they just let the league settle and work on the other one. And then once that league comes out, they can't do balance changes there. But the past league has settled, so now they can do balance changes for like the other game, right? That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, buffs mid, as cool as buffs mid league would be to keep it fresh and keep it running, because right, like, I feel like with an ARPG you get done pretty quick. It's like, Now, one thing that could get you to extend your playthrough a little bit would be to play a different character, right? Like, make a new build with a different character. And for some people, they would have already done that. But then if all of a sudden they buff something and something new and exciting becomes possible or available, then maybe that could extend it a little bit. But I don't even know if that's necessary. I think for ARPGs, it's healthy that you don't play them all the time, that you play the league and then, okay, I'm done with the league. Let me play something else. Let me go play fucking Oblivion or whatever.
That really is a problem. Honestly, if it is so hard to get someone to the point where they can do those kinds of things, it is like one of the hardest things, and I myself am not at the point where I can just make balance changes without someone checking it. Like, it's like I can balance things for the early game, but those like subtle late game things are like seriously seriously crazy in terms of the amount of stuff you have to know and the amount of stuff you have to understand, like in order to know what's really going to happen there. So it's like, and that's really tough. And the thing that is bad about that especially is that like I can get something to feel good like in the at the early game myself, but it's like if we're talking about like that later scaling stuff, like the stuff you need to really make it so that you've got the good build variety and you've got all that stuff, like that takes a lot of work. And I feel like we underestimated how much time that would take. But it's funny because looking back now, right, like the amount of years it took to actually get PoE 1 into a really good place in this regard was a long time. Like it was a long time. Now I don't think it will necessarily take us that long again. Like I think we do, there's some benefit of experience that we have, but it's certainly something where it's like, to actually get a skill to the point of scaling into endgame correctly, it does take quite a lot of effort. And I think there was another sort of mistake as well we were making here is that like because in PoE 1 the expectation was like every skill can be your primary skill.
Yeah.
It meant that we paid more attention when thinking about each skill of like, okay, how is this exactly going to become the only skill you're using at endgame? Which wasn't like completely technically true, but it was kind of like, there were definitely like most skills were kind of designed like this is your skill, right? This is the one you need. With the comboing stuff, I feel like we actually lost sight of that a bit too much. Because the assumption kind of was as well, you're using all sorts of different skills, so you don't have to worry too much about whether this skill scales or that skill scales. But actually, I feel like that was actually a mistake, because what it sort of meant is that we had our eye off the ball a little bit of like, okay, how can this skill actually become good enough to be used in game? And the reason why you're seeing all these build variety concerns really is because of the fact that I don't think we put enough thought into that on an individual skill basis. So this is something we really want to fix. Like definitely, like we're going to do some fixing for this during 020, like after PoE 1's out, we're going to be doing some of this. But a lot of it is going to come in 030. Like this is a major objective basically for what 030 is going to be doing, is like fixing this problem, making sure.
This is so fucking good. I really hope that they take my idea and it's not taking my idea because they haven't watched me, but I hope they come to the same conclusion as me and just say, okay, we're going to have these builds or these skills. They're going to be AoE skills. That's what they're going to do. They're going to be extremely good at just one button press, fire, delete a screen. And then we're going to have these builds. These are going to be our combo skills. They're going to be utility. They're going to do maybe some CC. They're going to maybe give you some DR. They're going to set up some shit, as well as further you in the combo. And then you have the last type of skill, which is your single target skill, which is what you use at the end of the combo to really get the payoff. So you have like 3 types of skills, and then you design them accordingly, because that way you can also have it so that, yeah, you don't have to fucking do combos to do actual clearing. You can just do this AoE skill, maybe with a combo, maybe something, but not that you have to press like fucking 8 buttons to do it, right? Like maybe there's like a 1-2 punch thing. Maybe there's like the lightning spear is really good, right? Because building up is it frenzy charges? Yeah, frenzy charges makes it way better. So you want to combo it with some sort of frenzy charge generation, but you can get that in lightning spear itself, right? Or you could get like you press one more button and then frenzy charge, right? Whichever works. But I don't want to do the whole twister combo to clear a fucking screen, right? Like, but I would like to do a twister combo for a boss if it was a little bit less bullshit with the fucking whirling slash thing.
Sure that more stuff scales in endgame to make it endgame viable, and like that's something that I think that we didn't
that's exciting.
Think about really enough during 020, especially like that, and that I think was probably like a huge part of why the reception for that was. I mean, there were various reasons, right? But that was a thing I think that is like a major reason why 020 didn't land as well as it should have. So like that stuff there, it's like, so basically we're just going to be paying a lot more attention to that stuff. And like I've already got like various ideas. Like in some cases, it's going to also have to involve skills. Like it might be that for some archetypes there just isn't currently a skill that really is like the in-game like level of scaling, the level of like AoE sort of clear stuff that you need. Like some archetypes just don't have that, and so that's something that we need to fix by either changing radically how a skill works or adding new skills to make that happen. That's kind of a real focus of that. And what I am now also saying, especially now with the new development model, like, okay, the data's fixed, the content is not. That might mean that the class we are planning on adding might not make it. Now, I think it will, but if it had to not make it in order to make it so that all of the rest of the classes we already have are good, then we will do that trade-off. And that is not the mindset we were in when we were coming up to 020. It's kind of like the class is the most important thing. Everything else is secondary, which I think in retrospect was the wrong way to look at things.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I like that, because on one hand it gives stability, right? Which PoE 2 itself doesn't really need right now. It's in early access, so this is the time where you could actually just go, you know what? It's going to come out when it's ready. The problem with that is that then all of a sudden you risk it colliding with PoE 1. And PoE 1 does need that stability because people have been waiting for, what, a year for a new PoE? Almost a year. For a new PoE 1 league. For an actual new PoE 1 league, not just fresh memes, which was good. I liked it for the most part. I didn't like the Atlas, that's why I quit off really quickly. But the ascendancies were fucking cool. I just imagine a PoE 2 patch, a new PoE 2 league without a new class. What's the point of starting over then? Like, why would you start over? Like, it just, there's no like league content that's specific to the new league that isn't on the old one. So why wouldn't you just play the character that you already made? Like, what is the purpose for me to go build something new if there's no new content? Is there, like, I guess there's new skills, but then again, like, why wouldn't I just use the one I've built and pick a skill of the new ones? Like, you kind of have to add a reason to start over, right? And if you don't have the new class, what's the reason? Maybe I'm dumb, but it's like, if I had a big interest in playing, say, Marauder, what's it called, Warrior, I would have done that already. If I didn't have I've played Amazon, I've played Warrior, somewhat, and I've played Monk. Those are the classes that seem cool. Like, I don't have much interest in playing a witch. I guess if you add enough spells or skills, I just think it is a lot to ask of a skill gem to lift a different character choice, right? But what about the people who has every character leveled then? Like, why would they start over, right? Like, if you already have an Amazon, you already have a Ranger, you already have a witch, you already have everything, right? Like, you've already got them. Why would you start over because there's a new skill? Wouldn't you just, oh, this skill is cool, that could work really well with my mercenary, or with a mercenary, so let me boot up my mercenary, respec it, and pick that skill and go brrrt, right? Like, if you don't add that new class, I think it's a lot to ask for just new skills to be the reason for people to basically re-level, or not basically, literally re-level, but basically just go through the campaign again.
So now it's like the existing experience of the existing classes is the pinnacle thing. Everything else is like, we'll do it if we can, and obviously we have to still be adding lots of content, and there's the whole side of the company that makes new areas and like new monsters and all that stuff, right? That's all sort of just going on. But in terms of like character work, right, the focus is more now on like make sure that the existing classes are good and make sure that experience is good than it is on make sure there is a new class. So like that's
I think I would prefer make sure there's a new class. I'm not saying that they shouldn't make sure the characters are good, but in terms of, let me rephrase that so I don't sound like an idiot. In terms of what they should focus on having in for a league launch, I think they should prefer the character, the new thing, rather than updates to existing things. Unless the updates are really transformative, but I don't think they will be. I don't see them really transforming, say, the warrior into something completely new, because I think their design philosophy is pretty set, and I don't think they'll change it that quickly. What I think they will do is buff some things and maybe change some things, but I don't think they will massively change the identity of the class or ascendancy or whatever you want. So I don't think it's going to be very novel. So I would probably, for the new League launch, I would probably prefer that they got a class and a weapon, right? Like, because that way it's a little bit more exciting. Because if you just add a class and a weapon, all of a sudden, if I have every single class, there's a reason for me to level a new class, right? Like, there's a reason for me to try the new thing, if it's cool, that is. And if you don't have everything, but maybe you just like doing whatever, there is the new weapon that could then be, oh shit, let me try this, right? Like, that brings in reasons to go again. And I get that, yeah, if you have every class, you could just be like, oh, well, let me just find the weapon and then build around it, right? And that's why the new class is there. So it's like, oh, there's this new thing, let me do it. And for me, who hasn't done everything, maybe that new weapon brings in a skill where I'm like, this could work really well with a sorcerer, whatever.
A change, I would say, in how we look.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a substantial change, especially with being okay with buffing things mid-league. That's not as soon as, this cycle. Awesome.
Right.
I want to push or question just a little bit on the nerfing end, okay? So the buffs sound great with nerfs. Let's take pull it out of a hat. Lightning Spear. Oh my god. Okay, so say Lightning Spear. I think a lot of people very quickly came to the either realization or the opinion that Lightning Spear was like the only viable skill in endgame. They moved on very quickly. They started playing other games and just left. People who stayed discovered, okay, actually, Lightning Spear isn't the only viable thing. There's all this other stuff you can try out. But because it ran rampant through the community, like a lot of people just decided, okay, I play Lightning Spear, and there's no reason to even try anything else, and then they quit.
Yep, you're right. It was really bad.
So I'm curious, do you think that outweighs the negatives of perhaps doing a mid-league nerf onto that while providing like a respec, saying, hey, Lightning Spear.
I understand. Look,
yeah, I'm just curious.
No. Do not fucking nerf mid-league. Also, I don't think Lightning Spear was overpowered. I think everything else was underpowered. And I think that's a valuable thing to say, because I think the game should play like Lightning Spear does at the end game. And there's just not enough options that does what Lightning Spear does. I don't think you should nerf Lightning Spear. I think you should bring everything up. And as much as that is like a, oh, never nerf, just buff, it is not from a perspective that you can't nerf things. It is from the perspective that Lightning Spear functions the way it should, I think. Now, arguably, it might hit too hard or whatever, but the fact that you can one clear or one tap a screen makes sense to me in an ARPG. I feel like you should be able to do that, especially in PoE, with how many maps you need to clear to do shit. One tapping an entire screen is how you're supposed to build, in my opinion. And it's not that Lightning Spear does that just way better than everything else. Well, it does, but it's that nothing else can do it, really. And I think that's an important distinction.
I'm with you in theory completely, right? I do understand that, but in practice, we would not be getting any friends, right? Like the people who you say leave because they're done because they did Lightning Spear and then they were done. Those same people would have been done instantly if we had nerfed it. Like I really don't think that they would have moved on, and it's just one of those things that like it's just the reality of this is just so harsh in terms of like how that works.
So for example,
they're definitely going to nerf it by
the
that
cast on crit change in 0-1. Was that like evident in the like player graphs essentially? Like when you saw that happen?
Well, I mean, absolutely. Like, I mean, not even just graphs, just reactions and everything, right? Like it is, that kind of stuff. It's really harsh. And look, nerfs are always going to be unpopular, but as I said, the mid-league nerf it is unfair to someone who is making the character. It really is, and it's like I really do believe that no matter how much respecking and stuff that you allow, it still is the case that people just feel really bad about it. So yeah, it really sucks
like that he's passionate that it's unfair.
Screwed with the meta a lot. But even though that happened, I would say that it's not like there weren't still problems. Like, there are more viable things than maybe players say, but then at the same time, there aren't enough viable things for what we want to deliver, right? So, like that's something that we just need to focus on anyway.
Well, bringing up the floor is going to be a great solution, and I'm pretty excited to see those after the 3.26 expansion comes out. Awesome. All right. So I want to stay on the topic of balance for a little bit, but we're gonna tighten it a little bit, the focus. So I want to talk about skill scaling in particular. So for example, like storm mages as a skill, they're lightning based, but lightning elemental damage doesn't scale them, nor will projectile damage or anything related to like that archetype. It's just minion damage. Are you guys open to like adding more tags to some of these gems to allow for a little bit more diversity in how you scale some of these more niche skills? Or is there a reason that you guys are like limited a little bit?
I actually am open to that particular case. Like that particular case is one that I was actually advocating for, but there's like various pressures for various reasons in the studio about like, how things should work, like making things consistent and stuff like that. And there's also just like complexity of implementation and so on. Like there's a lot of like all of that, those changes, because we have so many stats, they just end up taking a huge amount of time. And one of the things that's interesting is like, every stat that existed in PoE 1 is still in the PoE 2 code base. And in theory, a designer they don't want those stats to be broken because like they might want to use them, right? And so what that means is that every single stat sort of like change in the way that thing works. It's like, not only are we supporting all the stats that currently exist in PoE 2, but every single stat that ever worked in PoE 1 is also getting maintained in this code base because they're all still there. And so that means it's like the ability to change like one of these things, it actually takes longer than you might expect. But what it does mean is that we've got like a huge pile of stuff that like, when we need something, it's like half the time this already exists, right? It's just right there. We just use it. But yeah, it just means that like there's a lot of stuff to do something like that. So we discussed this change about having, like basically look, I remember it even came up because when we're like, okay, like when you're using SRS, a lot of people would consider that feels like a spell, right? Like, so therefore, like in PoE, the way that you understand as a PoE player is, well, that's a minion, so of course it scales this way and all that, and that's fine, right? But like, if you're just a new player just turning up for the first time and you see that, you're probably expecting that your spell damage is going to increase the damage that thing does.
Right.
So like it's stuff like that kind of means that like, in some ways I would like to make these sorts of changes, but it is a bit of a fight sometimes about like, how that should work. And once again, as I said, it doesn't help that on the other side of that, there's the people saying, well, yeah, but changing this is going to take frickin' ages because we got to change all these stats, right? So they've always got that on their side kind of as an extra part of the argument there. So there's always that thing. So, but the thing is, like, so what you're saying there about changing that is one way we could potentially make some skills scale better. Like, it's an option that we have and one that I'm willing to explore. But like, as I said, I think that it isn't necessarily that one thing. It's sort of many different elements that we can do. Like, it can be changing functionality. It can just be like, like just adding the ability for, well, yeah, just other elements of the skill that can make us allow it to scale with other stats that we already have without necessarily changing how they work. But I mean, as I said, both ways can work, and I am totally open to it for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Good to hear. And here's another one that I'm really curious about, because personally, going into PoE 2, I thought I was going to use weapon swap so much, dude, and I ended up not using it. And I think one of the reasons why is because there's that like that weapon swap speed penalty that still exists in the game, and you guys are encouraging combo based builds, but at the same time, it's a little discouraged. So I'm really curious, one, about your thoughts on either altering this or removing it entirely, because I do know that there's like 3 passives on the south side of the tree that lowers the amount of time, but that's it. There's no other way to kind of smooth that out.
What I wanted to do was to make it scale with attack speed, but as soon as we said that, we're like, okay. So like the theory was, it sounds so easy, right? You're like, okay, right. So whatever weapon you're switching to, you look at the attack speed of that, because you want the local attack speed modifiers to work, right? Like that's the first thing, is you can't just use global attack speed, it won't scale enough. It has to work with the weapon that you're actually swapping to. And so then you're like, okay, so sure, you look at the local attack speed mods of that weapon and that should be able to make it work. But then it's like, okay, so what happens then when the thing you're swapping to is a staff? It doesn't have attack speed mods. It's like a different thing. It's like, okay, shit, what do we do now? There's like questions there. So effectively, like, there was all these kind of questions around this that kind of came up, and then we ended up not doing it, but it's still something to do, because I agree that there's a problem. We have to make it so that I don't think we can remove it. And the reason why is because immediately would mean that.
Couldn't you just take the combined attack speed and half it? like, so if you have attack speed on your spear and you have attack speed on your spear, so you have 15 on one and you have 17 on the other, then you get 16. But if you have 30 on one and 0 on the other, you get 15. If you have 0 on 0, then you get 0, and then it's just the global attack speed, right? Couldn't you just do that? Well, you have to... Well, attack speed and cast speed, I guess, because otherwise you're just penalizing spell users. Can you just do that? Am I dumb? That sounds so easy to me.
Something like anything that gives you sort of like ability options that other weapons have would probably become a little bit too easy. If it was just like literally 0 swap time, like you would just be raking all day, so that's kind of thing. So everything else would become, you know, and look, you could argue there's a problem with rake and whatever.
Is everybody already raking? No.
yeah, sure. But effectively, look, I agree with you that by the time you get to endgame speeds, you do need like something about that to change. And the way I think is to care about like attack speed and like something, we just need to work out exactly how that can work. And I do think that it is something that I want to try and address in 0.3 if we can. I just need to sort of see like exactly how it can work. But yeah, I agree. There's a problem, and we need to fix it. I will mention that like Mark's playing a build where he's using weapon swap, like, you know, like that's, you know, so he's kind of like, you know, it does work. Like he says, like it could be better, but it's not like unviables from his perspective. But look, I think it just probably just needs to be faster with some kind of way of scaling up attack speed.
Yeah, I think people use it. It just feels a little clunky, especially when you're in endgame and like you want to quickly swap between abilities.
Yeah. As I said, I'm pretty sure the speed will make a huge difference. That's 100%. That's the thing. Yeah.
All right, a little extra question on weapon swap. So there was supposed to be a lock weapon tech coming in 0.2.
Yes.
Not in yet.
Still haven't done it yet. We will get there. We'll get there. I swear it should be in 0.3. It really should. Like hopefully they'll be getting one of those QOL videos before too long with that one in it.
Okay, cool.
I
was looking for that.
Okay, and then staying on weapons just for one more moment. A lot of skills currently, well, like pretty much all skills are locked to a single weapon type. Are you guys open in the future to expanding that range of possibilities?
He's going to say no, but
my
please.
friend Dreamcore, he used the example of being able to Falling Thunder using a mace and a quarterstaff. You know, it would like open up some cool tech and like unique item possibilities. Right. And is that something you guys are ever looking to do, or are you firmly
I don't think that I would want to do it like just as a kind of a base feature like that, because like a lot of the identity of the weapons is, you know, comes from that. Now what I do think is important is like, okay, if you want to do you know, something with Falling Thunder, like ideally weapon swap is the way you achieve that. And so if weapon swap isn't good, then that means that synergy isn't going to be good. So like that, I feel, is the way to solve that, is just make the weapon swapping better. That being said, like I do think that you can make things possible using uniques, right? Like you can have a unique you know, mace that lets you use quarterstaffs, because like, that might not necessarily be exactly that combo, but you know, like what I'm saying is you can do stuff like that, and like more.
I don't agree with this, man. Like there is no reason that you shouldn't be able to use an axe for a lot of the things you use a sword for, or a dagger for a lot of the things you use a sword for, right? Like, or what's it called, a quarterstaff for a lot of the things you use a mace for, and vice versa, right? Obviously, some difference, but I do not see the difference. Like, axe, mace, and quarterstaff should have a decent amount of overlaps. Spear, axe should have some overlaps, right? Like, but yeah, bow and what's it called, sword? No, not really, right? Like, it's just limiting, because yeah, okay, then you can have a unique where you can use all the skills, but the whole thing that makes it cool though is, let's say Falling Thunder, that's a cool spell, or strike or whatever. If I want to use that in combination with some freaking mace skill, I just can't, unless I then use a unique. But what if there's a unique, say, axe, a unique two-handed axe that does something that would really beef up my idea for Falling Thunder? there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do Falling Thunder with an axe. It is just bringing it up top, slamming it down into the ground. You can do that with any weapon, basically. I don't like it. I think they're being a little bit stubborn here, and I think it's for balance. I don't think it's for gameplay reasons. I think it's for like, I think it's for animations, and I think it's for simplicity and balancing. And I don't think it's gameplay, and that's why I don't like it.
Uniques is going to really be able to unlock those types of things.
That'd be awesome.
So that just comes down to like making more build enabling uniques that can do that kind of stuff. But I do think it's important to keep the identity of the different weapon classes, and yeah, it's the weapon swap where just making that better will make it those cross-class things more viable.
I just heard the animators screaming from a few rooms away when you said they're going to allow that. So, oh god. Well,
thankfully, it's a lot easier to animate on the PoE 2 rigs, so you know it should. But yeah, as I said, it really is more of a unique thing, I would say.
Okay, awesome. Well, that sounds cool. All right, so this is on progression and the Atlas skill trees. So presently,
yeah, that's really slow.
And this is I guess is more of a personal / casual dad gamer question for you. Sorry. Right now, it feels like there was a large time investment in to access not the entire trees, but just the initial like 2 points, maybe, right? To fight your 100%. First audience for the king and everything. And I'm wondering if you guys are okay with what the progression's at. And I know you guys have been constantly lowering the amount of time it takes by upping splinter counts, making things more common. So I'm wondering, do you think with the new updates, you're going to be in a better position? And why do you think you were in this position in the first place? Like, did you just miscalculate how long it was going to take people to reach these things? Because it was a lot of time in.
Yeah. There's a few things. So one of them is that for sure, just miscalculating the amount of time, like definitely the case. But the other problem is that we don't have enough content in each of the kind of in-game league mechanics at the moment. Like, I mean, there was supposed to be more breach bosses than just one, right? And like we have the models, right? We've got stuff that we'll do. Like it will happen at some point, right? And it's like all of that stuff exists. It's just that like it isn't in yet. And so it's like
okay.
What that sort of led to is a situation where you've got this big gulf in the middle of the progression of each of those leagues, right? Like there isn't kind of like you start breach and it's cool when you start, and there's a kind of a big gulf, and then you get to the end of it. It's like there needs to be more of that middle stuff kind of in there to kind of like, you know, fill into, to give you points to kind of have more of that progression going on. And so it's like what I would say is like, to run with that example, it's like I wouldn't consider breach to be finished, right? Like there is more stuff that needs to be there, but to make that a full thing, and that's what we need to be doing, expanding and automate that. So like, I mean, there is tons we would do, right? Like with that stuff. Like the onboarding of it's not good enough. Like there's just it's all the progression stuff around it. It's just not enough content, right? We just need more content. Now, unfortunately, I don't know. Like, I mean, we'll get more of it in 030, but I don't know that I would say it's fixed yet in 030. Like that is something that we will be continuing to add. Like it's one of the things that I think is up there in terms of the tiers of problems that we have, you know, for the end game. But like I would say what I'm saying is like I think we know what the problem is and we know how to fix it. It's just really the time to make all that content and like get all those bosses and get all that stuff done. So we're you know with each expansion we're chipping away at it, we're adding more stuff, and like that'll get better. But it will just take a little while to just get all of that in and sort of
that's
get it
a really
done.
cool answer. I really like that.
I would just say there's more content that we wanted to add to all of these than what was added, and then therefore that'll come in as we go.
So there'll be like different choke points essentially where you're going to hit these different tiers.
I mean you get more of the stuff, you know, like I mean if you compare like breach and PoE 1 to PoE 2, like there's just more stuff going on with it in terms of like the you know the different types of, there's like different types of breach encounters and the different breach bosses and stuff like that. Like there's just more going on. So like that's the kind of thing you need, and like that level of content is what you need to kind of make it good. So yeah,
okay,
more stuff will happen. We'll get there. Like, you know, it'll happen, but it just takes a little while to get to that point.
Okay.
So you know, like yeah, as I said, might not in 030 we'll make improvements, but I think it's probably more like 040 will that'll really start to come together.
Okay. How do you feel about the dichotomy between something like breach splinters, which I'd argue is rather deterministic at this point, versus an audience with a king and accessing the ritual boss and needing to find it in a ritual and defer it? Like, do you guys like that there's differences there, or? I
mean, personally, I do. Like, I like it when content feels different as much as possible. Like, there was certainly discussion, like when we were talking about being able to make like have it be early, because one of the things we wanted to make sure we're doing is that, like, for the earlier difficulty levels, it's easier to get the audiences and so on. And so then we started talking about, oh, how are we going to do that for ritual? Maybe we need to add splinters to that. And I was kind of like, no, I don't really want to just have it so that every in-game pinnacle just works the same way. Like, I like there to be feeling like there's differences in how they all work. So ideally we can sort of keep the flavor and different sort of ways of interacting with these things if we can.
Okay. I want to throw this in there. Who made the call to vacuum breach splinters? Was there anybody who just said, it's time, let's do it?
It was probably Mark, I would say. It wasn't me, but yes, probably Mark. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That was a pretty cool change, I got to say. Okay, this one has to do with monsters specifically, Jonathan. And it's something we chatted about in December. And I was really hyped about it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So when we last talked, you spoke about how normal and magic monsters will be different compared to rare monsters, not only in terms of the random modifiers that spawn on them, but the fact that, let's say, a vulture demon that is rare will have an extra actual ability compared to a magic or common vulture demon. I've never noticed those in game. Are those still in game? And I'm just not noticing them.
I know what you mean. So it didn't actually happen as much as I had expected that to actually happen. So I think there's probably like 3 monsters or something like that ended up actually doing that, and like that was way less than what we expected. Like, I know one of them is like the Death Knights have an extra ability, and like a few things like that. But so like there's stuff like that, but it's like it didn't actually happen as much as I wanted. It's one of those things where, like, if I had time, I would go and do a bunch of that stuff. And like, we thought we were adding more of them than we actually ended up doing. So that's kind of what sort of ended up happening more is like more of the specific balance sort of happened, but less of the like extra abilities happened. And that I think what the issue is that, so effectively there's a lot less monsters that can be rare than can be the monster set. Like a lot of monsters are just disabled from being rare because they don't make a good rare fight. And the intention to fix that is to make it so that when we have a monster where we say this can't be a rare because it's it doesn't have enough going on with it, that's where we wanted to add a new ability to make that happen. So it really is just more work to do that, but it's sort of hard to make that the thing that's more important than, like, effectively, like, resources got pulled off and put onto a bunch of other things. And so that's like one of those things I really think I'd like going, but at the moment we just as I said, it's on like 3 monsters and we need to do more later, I'd say.
All right, I thought I wasn't saying it, so I just wanted to confirm that. And I was also curious, there are some monsters that instill like fear and horror into people when they play PoE 2. Is there any specific one monster that makes you like clench up when you hear it or see it on screen? I mean, a lot of people hated those vultures that leapt 4 screens away.
They are fucking nasty.
I mean, the funny thing in endgame is it's probably the frickin' what do you call them? Quill crabs are probably the thing that's the most.
Or the serpents.
But it's funny. The answer is so different in endgame versus not. Like in the campaign, my favorite monster is the Eternal Knight. Like I really love that thing. It's just like one of my favorite monsters, just because I like how like the counterplay you have to do with it and that kind of stuff. But in endgame they just kind of end up dying. And it's like doesn't really matter.
I think that was my first hardcore death. Was to the Eternal Knight.
Right. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is this the one that reflects?
Cool. All right. Before we get into actual Dawn of the Hunt specific stuff, 2 more questions about the general game. So one of them might be pretty quick. Originally, when you guys were pitching Path of Exile 2, the pitch was every zone is going to have like a boss in it. Now, I know now during early access, not every zone has a boss. Like all of them have like cool encounters and the like, but not all of them have a boss encounter. Is the plan still for every zone to have a big boss, or is it a little bit more dispersed throughout the campaign now?
I want that to happen. I don't know if it'll happen for release or not. Like so we have bosses for these, right? Like all of the areas in the game, we have a boss that's for that area. It's just that not all of them are finished, and it's about getting time to finish making them. So it's kind of like, okay, like certainly the promise of having 100 bosses will be like 100% like over delivered as far as like getting like once we get to release. As to whether or not every single area will have a boss at release, potentially not. But it's like we do have all the bosses sitting there like waiting to actually just get all the VFX and get all the stuff like there. Like,
that sucks.
it's just we just have to get them done. So like I eventually we will definitely get there because like as I said, the bosses are just sitting there. We just need to freaking make them. Like we have models, we've got rigs, we've got all that stuff. It's just we don't have the animation finished and the VFX done and like all the actual design work that needs to happen to actually make it good. So like as I said, still the plan. It's just that there might be other things that feel more important to us to do rather than add a boss to one particular random zone during the campaign.
That makes total sense. Excited to hear though that they're there. They're just waiting for balance. Okay, cool.
Right.
But adding the boss to a random zone in the campaign would also put that boss into the rotation for bosses in the endgame, though, right? So surely it's not just a random boss in the campaign. It is a piece of endgame content. But I guess maybe not big enough.
All right, before we get into the specific 020 and 021 balance and additions, I'm really curious. Obviously, you guys are getting a ton of critical feedback to the game, and Mark really likes bingo cards. What is the best place for us to put this feedback? Is it like on your forums, on Reddit, in posts? How do you guys like to consume this best? Especially, you're talking about like an elite cabal of balancers in the game. Like how do they like to read the feedback the best? Like, what's the most productive, I guess,
Well,
is what I'm asking.
The reason we like the bingo cards is because it forces someone to really consolidate what is the most important things. Like if they're going to make a bingo card, it's like you can't just like kind of go on a rant and have a billion different little things where you kind of don't know what's important. It's like these are actually the things that you are saying are important to us, and so that's kind of the reason why I like that. Now, in terms of like, so we obviously have got our community team. They're reading like all these different places. So like, I'm going to get feedback, like the overall like sentiment of like what people are complaining about the most from them, regardless of kind of where you post it. But in terms of like what I like to consume myself, that's why we like the bingo cards. But also like, you know, like someone who makes a video essay on YouTube, like that's the kind of thing where like I can sort of listen and understand the, you know, like there tends to be like, there tend to be like, if they're a creator with like, you know, like a lot of views, I'm going to be paying attention to that stuff, right? So like that stuff is another thing that I like to watch and understand. But as I said, like in terms of just like random people posting, it really doesn't matter.
I think if you watch a creator with a lot of viewers, a lot of subscribers and stuff for their takes on the, you do have to look at the comments as well, right? Because just because that they are popular, just because they get a lot of views, just because they have a lot of takes on the balancing does not mean that they speak for their audience, right? Like, I don't think when Asmongold was making content for WoW, I do not think necessarily that most of his audience would actually agree with him on a bunch of the balance changes he was making, or sorry, suggesting. They follow him for different reasons. Now, for an ARPG, it might be different, but I just think it's a little bit dangerous to just be like, okay, popular content creator equal like voice of the people, right? Like, I don't think that's necessarily correct. Like, you take somebody like Quinn, right? He's a popular ARPG content creator. A lot of the shit he suggests is so dumb. Some of it is good, but some of it is fucking horrendous. And just because he gets a lot of views, I don't think, like, I personally would not give his video a thumbs down just because I disagree with it. Now, I wouldn't comment either, but I think you got to be a little bit careful with that. And maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay. I don't consume all that much PoE content. But I just think I've seen a lot of these popular content creators giving takes on balance, giving ideas for what they want for features and all of that, where I'm just like, this sounds fucking horrible. And I still enjoy the content creator, right? Like, for Diablo and PoE, it's been Quinn. For Diablo, it's been like only it's been like Rax, and it's been to some extent Riker, right? Like, for PoE only, there's Scissorin has given some takes. For WoW, there's been a lot with Asmongold. There's been many of the raiders, like, where they've been out and giving balance takes or feature takes. I'm like, just like, this sounds fucking horrible. But I'd still watch the video, and I'd still watch the next one. So I don't think you can just unbridled or should pay unbridled attention to what they're saying just because they're a big content creator. I don't think you can necessarily equate their following to agreement with their takes on the game. But maybe I'm wrong. But I think Quinn is like the prime example of somebody with a big following who you should rarely fucking pay attention to what he suggests. Like, maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here just because it's fun to dog on Quinn, but like there is definitely a bunch of things where it's like, what are you suggesting? That sounds horrible.
No matter where you post, because our community team will pick it up and they'll get it and they'll find it and deliver it to us.
Okay. More bingo cards. They're coming your way. Sounds good.
Yep.
All right. So, Dawn of the Hunt, Jonathan. I think we mentioned this a little bit earlier with Disengage and Rake, but the spear skills, people loved the mobility that they added to the game. A lot of people are using them on different, builds or classes that aren't actually using the spear for damage and everything, right? With Disengage, especially. We saw, the race with like Angermus and everybody else just disengaging through the campaign, right?
Right.
I'm curious, seeing that people really like the mobility the spear has, is this making you guys consider perhaps adding more mobility skills to future weapons, to previous weapons, just to give people more tools to move throughout the game?
Well, I mean, it comes down to what's the feeling of the weapon supposed to be, right? In the case of the spear, you're talking about, a dexterous melee weapon. Like the quarterstaff is not as agile, but it's still more agile compared to the mace. You know what I mean? Like, once swords are in, they're going to be more agile than a mace, but potentially less agile than a spear. Like, you're just kind of wanting to get that feeling of like, of each weapon kind of has that feeling. So I mean, look, every weapon type should have some level of mobility, but like the spear really probably is about, I always want that to be the thing that has the maximum, mobility. That's why it sort of feels like that. That's what makes it feel different.
Yeah, you guys achieved it. It's pretty darn mobile. I love Thunderous Leap. I'm also curious, just as a brief follow-up, have you guys ever considered more
Do I like that?
Blink-like spirit gems for dexterity and strength-based classes? Because obviously this is an intelligence gem. We'll get into attributes in just a moment.
Right.
They're sometimes a little tight. Have you guys thought about like a flavorful way to do blinkish abilities on other archetypes?
If that happens, it's probably going to happen on the on the Dexant class that we haven't yet released. Like that's the one that would be in theme with that kind of ability. So
Shadow
yeah, that's
stepping.
kind of where you'll see that. So
He just nailed it.
So yeah,
You see it in his eyes. You just see it here. Like he's trying to be coy and like
to do blinkish abilities
see
on other archetypes?
he's trying to be mysterious.
if that happens, it's probably going to happen on the on the Dexant class that we haven't yet released. Like that's the one that would be in theme with that kind of ability. So
Shadow
yeah, that's
stepping.
kind of where you'll see that. So,
Yeah, there it is.
So yeah, that one is a little way out.
It's like, oh,
still,
fuck.
but like yeah, there's a lot of design stuff along those lines. I would say for that for that class.
All right, little tidbits for shadow enjoyers out there. All right. All right. So on from the mobility front to crafting systems in Dawn of the Hunt. So Dawn of the Hunt introduced a lot of different crafting systems or items.
Wait, so if Spear is going to be the most mobile, the fuck's a dagger gonna do? Or are they not gonna have daggers? Daggers should be more mobile than Spear. He said he wants Spear to be the most mobile. Does that mean there's not gonna be daggers? Like melee daggers? Or are they gonna be less mobile? Because you need more mobility with a dagger. It's shorter, right? Like
Comes to the game. Now, a lot of them are really cool. I'm curious, how do you feel, how much should an average player be engaging with them in endgame? So I'm not even talking about campaign. I'm talking, you're in the endgame, you're running maps. How often should I be touching something like the Recombinator?
Well, Recombinators are in particular like the one that I would say is the most kind of, like it does take a certain level of person to use that, right? Like that is like for you have to be a bit of a grinder to be able to use that system for sure.
That's
so like that one,
right?
I mean, I would say that one is sort of designed to be that way. Like, and it kind of has to be just due to the nature it works. And the funny thing about Recombinators, and I feel like I've said this before, even with the previous designs, that like it is really hard to make something with with that mechanic that isn't that both feels like that it's worthwhile for a player while also not completely being ridiculous from the perspective of like making the item game too easy. And it's like it's really hard to get into a place where you've kind of got like both of those two things. Like the benefit that recombination.
I really think a Recombinator, it should be fairly easy to get a 4 mod item. There are still 2 mods left to strive for, right? It could just be expensive, so you have to grind a lot to get there. But getting a 4 mod item, at least the way PoE 2 is now, where you don't have that many options for adding deterministic stuff, if any, other than essences, right? There's no re-rolling other than just full chaos, I guess. But there's like, you can't deterministically get much other than just use an essence, right? And that isn't even deterministic. That is just a less random, right? Because it's not you get physical percent. It is you get a attack modifier or you get a physical modifier or whatever, right? So I think for the Recombinators, getting a 4-stat item should be relatively easy. Not easy, but just not borderline impossible either. I feel like for a 4-stat item, like at 25%, so it doesn't feel completely fucking useless, and maybe it is already, maybe I'm stupid, but at 25% for me to be able to pick 4 affixes, and then it can be the 2% for a 5 and the 0 point something for a 6, right? Like, I don't care about that. But a 4-stat item, I think, should be fairly doable.
Gives you compared to using other types of crafting methods is actually ridiculous. But yet it also feels completely like the chances are incredibly tiny to a player.
Yes.
So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you sort of always ends up like that. And we sort of had trouble with recombination a few times. As to whether or not players should use it more, I mean, we sort of the target was that people would be using it like once per expedition, and I guess I don't know if we've like completely succeeded at that.
Oh, okay.
So you know, yeah, like that's kind of one of those things. But yeah, that one I would say is definitely one of the harder ones. Like for the other ones, like we want a variety. Like some of them you should be using all the time, some of them you should be using much more rarely. You know, we're about to add a bunch of these new a bunch of these new runes and things like that. You know, like those ones are kind of intended to be like, you know, like they're a thing you want to find, like they're rarer, like, you know, they're cool chase drops to find that. Those would be relatively rare, but you know, still way more common than what the current rarest shit is. So you know, like, because we had that problem, of course, you know, that we found out, and that one. You know, like, so effectively it should be a mix, in my opinion. We're kind of a little like want to really make sure though that you don't get to the point of like you get suddenly inundated with like too much all at once. So we just have to like balance that a little bit.
Okay. I'm curious about the socketable system, Jonathan. So right now you touched on a whole bunch of chase socketables are being added to the game. And right now many of the stuff in game are meant to solve simple problems, right? The rune system was pitched as kind of a replacement for Path of Exile once crafting bench, and with these new chase socketables being added to the game, it seems like that might be fading a little bit away. Is there going to be other ways to solve these simple problems that people have in the future or imminently? Or
well, I get so I guess the feeling that we have is like as you kind of get deeper into the end game, then you'll get to the point where the base items that you're getting, because they're getting better, are kind of able to solve your problems more, and so therefore you don't have as much need to rely on the runes to do that. Now there'll be people who will argue that like they're still having to rely on them a lot for things like attribute requirements, and that's like another whole topic that we could talk about. So you know, like that's a thing for sure. So it's kind of like, but the ideal we kind of want to strive for is like as you progress through the end game, your items are getting better. You no longer need, you know, like you might be a bit overcapped on res, you know, because you're getting the items are getting better. Therefore, you're like, okay, you're getting to the point now where you can say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice this rune slot, and that's right around the time when you're getting these like rarer chaser and other socketables coming in. So that's kind of like the feeling that we sort of want to achieve. And so then by the time you're like ultra top tier, you're like, I'm not using, I'm basically not using any attribute or resistance socketables. I'm only using these like ultra chase like really things, or maybe it's like kind of 75-25 with 25 on just to fix that one resistance that's not quite right, like that kind of thing. That's kind of where we want to be as you kind of get through that progression, to kind of get that feeling of like another feeling of progress for the character.
Okay. On the resistance front too, we'll talk about attributes in a second, but resistances especially, I and many other players have found it almost, so when you find a new cool item and you want to replace it, but it's going to replace an item that solves many of your resistances, right? It turns into this whole game of gear shuffling, and this is primarily, I think, an early end game thing, right? You don't have a lot of currency to trade with, or maybe you're playing SSF, and this basically ruins your character, and it causes you to need to reshuffle everything. Are you guys aware that is kind of like the PoE1 like gem system, where the whole shuffling constantly had to occur, and that you have to juggle these defenses to maintain that base level of LE res? And you think there are any solutions that could be added to the game? I know in Path of Exile 1 there was like the harvest resistance swap on items.
That's a really good take, yeah. So they didn't want you to shuffle all of your gear when you got a fucking 4 or 5 or 6 link, right? So that's why they took the gems off the gear, because nobody liked, and also the colorings, right? So whenever you'd have to shuffle the colors around and stuff. And now they just made it with resistances, because we don't have the crafting bench, so we can't just say, okay, well, I need cold, or then we can't deliberately spread out our resistances on different pieces. So it's like, okay, I need this much fucking extra cold, so let me put it on my chest and my gloves or whatever. And then, I need a new chest. Oh, well, I mean, let me craft cold. Oh, that chest had some fucking lightning rest or whatever. Oh, I guess I need to craft some lightning rest somewhere, right? Like, we don't have that option anymore. And so now we're just, when we get an item, we just have to shuffle rings and amulets and stuff, instead of when we get a new, 4 link or 5 link or whatever.
Maybe that could be an omen that could be found?
So the harvest resistance swap. So I actually talked to Mark about this recently.
Okay.
And we were discussing about like whether or not we were happy with the harvest resistance swap. And like we were kind of like, the worry there is that it does make things a little bit too easy as far as the item game goes, like for sure. Like he was kind of like he sort of had the opinion that like
it's good.
Like that's kind of like it's part of what like it's sort of part of what sort of trivialized like getting things exactly where you needed them to go. Like he's kind of the opinion that was too powerful. We sort of talked for a while about this, and the issue that we were having is like, okay, so I'm like, okay, sure, so you could make something like that, but just make it really rare, right? And it's like, well, okay, but if it's rare, then you're not exactly solving your gear shuffling problem, because like that you need to be doing that all the time. So it's kind of like we're in a bit of a hard place. So I actually don't really have an answer to how like we can improve this without kind of like compromising the item system, what we would consider to be too much of a way. Like, so this is I guess this is a potential concern. Now, the runes in theory kind of do address that, because it's like you can temporarily kind of like use them. But then the concern is, okay, and like we've already sort of thought about this, but we kind of like are sort of probably just okay with it for the time being. Like, obviously, the concern is, and this is the thing Mark brought up, is like, okay, you can't take a socketable out. These chase runes, if you can't do that, it does mean that you're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to use it until I know my gear is perfect, right? Like there's this concern if they're chase. So we did sort of discuss whether or not we want to think about that. Now, we are just going to, for the time being, just leave it how it is. But like, there's definitely this concern of like, okay, if you got to really chase socketable, like you're going to save it for only an item that you know is perfect. And so yeah, we'll sort of see how that plays out. But we'll have a look at that.
I do think they need to add, if they are going to make these socketables rare, I think they need to add a way to unsocket them. And you end up with so many runes. You could probably just lower the amount of rune drops, right? Like, and just make it so you can take them out. Or you could make it you can only take them out after they are a certain tier. So maybe these chase socketables can just be picked out, so you only need to find one for each slot, right? Because it is definitely one of those things where, oh shit, I found this big socketable chase thing. Am I going to put it in my mediocre weapon? Then no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm going to wait until I have a good weapon.
And a little bit later.
Okay.
And then to that problem, if I then have a good weapon and I put this chase socketable in, now I find a better weapon. Oh, but I can't swap because the socketable is more damage than the difference between the two weapons on their own, right? So now I have my weapon upgrade, and now I need to chase this fucking socketable again, right? I think that's gonna suck. That's my opinion. I don't like that kind of thing. Now, if you drop enough of them that you can just swap, it's fine. But it sounds like he's saying they're gonna be rare, and that means you can't just swap.
I'm also curious on like the attribute front. It seems like right now, the introduction of spears, it became prevalent to me, and in 0-1 it wasn't as crazy. It seems like attribute requirements are super high for some items and even some gems. Are you guys aware that they might be? I don't even think it's that much. I think it's like maybe 10-15% too high. Are you guys looking into adjusting that at all?
Please take them down by 25%.
This is another one of those things that I kind of was thinking about. So I was kind of like, okay.
The solo ones, at least.
I think what it comes down to is this. If you are playing a strength character, and should it be the case that you don't have to worry about attribute requirements for strength gear, or should you still sometimes run into something where you're like, okay, I need to allocate a bit more extra strength for this? Like, should this be the case or not? It's currently kind of balanced to a point where it's like, you know, like you have to occasionally care about attribute requirements. And what that means, of course, is that if you then want to splash and do something else from a different character, that's like relatively harder, right? And so I was sort of thinking about this, and I was like, I might be open to lowering it a little bit down for gems to kind of allow for more of that like thing. I wouldn't be much, I think, like, you know, because I don't want to make it completely. Like, I feel like in PoE1 it was kind of most the case that attribute requirements were pretty irrelevant for a lot of things. Like, it mattered a little bit, but like not very much, you know. Like, I don't think it mattered a lot, and so we did want to kind of make sure that attributes mattered more. But it's possible we overshot a little bit for the gems. I think for the gear, it's okay. I don't think that we've got like a huge problem there necessarily, although there are maybe a few cases where like people would argue that it's not right. I could definitely see the argument for gems coming down a little bit. It's one of those things that I want to definitely have another look at, because it's something that we can definitely sort of think about changing for sure. Okay. The main thing is just making sure that people can run builds, but on some level there is intended to be an optimization problem, right? It's like, okay, you got to be thinking like, okay, if I want to do this and use an off-class thing, it's like now I'm making a sacrifice somewhere else. Like having to allocate the attributes is what prevents you from making a build that's just literally the best thing from every class on one build. Like that would.
Nah, but the problem with that already is that you're already on the wrong side of the tree, because you have all. If you want to make, let's say I'm playing a warrior and I want to make a quarterstaff build, I am on the literal opposite side of the tree to all the quarterstaff nodes. So I'm already making that sacrifice. I don't need to be sacrificing even further by investing heavily into attributes. Also, none of the attributes in my area just naturally give strength. So I need to give dex or int or whatever, right? Like, they give strength. So I need to further invest into fucking attributes, or I need to invest into traveling over to that side of the tree, right? Like, if you are building a class with a weapon that is opposite side or just far away, you're already making the sacrifice that all the nodes that corresponds to that particular weapon, as well as speaks to any of the combos with that, right? Like all of the frenzy charge nodes, all of the power charge nodes are on the right side of the tree, right? Like, well, maybe not the power charge, they might be top right, right, and frenzy's bottom right, yeah. But if I'm playing on the left side of the tree, and I'm playing something that consumes frenzy charges, or something that consumes power charges, then I don't get those nodes, I don't get the weapon nodes, I have to make do with what's in my area, or I need to travel all the way over there. You don't need to sacrifice further already. I don't think so, at least.
Would be an ultra dominant. Like, the attributes are the only thing really preventing that from being the case. So especially, you know, with more of the combo stuff going on, we just have to be a little bit careful about that. So, you know, like that's really the sort of the only control level we have around that. Okay. So yeah.
Okay. Now, yeah, especially on spears. Spears, I feel like those, like, because they encourage you to go on like sometimes all three attributes or two certain attributes, and it gets a little tough. That's just what I experienced. So maybe a little bit on that front, but...
Is there a tri-attribute spear?
I believe that... Maybe I'm crazy. Chat's probably going insane if I'm wrong. I thought there was. I might be wrong.
There's definitely duo.
I remember I was just struggling in 0-2 or 0-1. Right. I was not. And...
Right.
It was rough. It was rough in 020.
Right. Okay. Understood. Understood.
Okay. So here's another curious one that I've seen a lot of debate about. So movement speed in Path of Exile 2. We're not even going to talk about boots, Jonathan. I just want to talk about the baseline movement speed, and not compared to monsters or anything, just the overall movement speed of a character. In the monsters too, a lot of people feel like it's too slow. And like a gauge people give is when you get Hare's Foot, that boon in Trial de Secima, it's like 30% increased movement speed. People are like, oh, that's where we should be, right? How do you feel about it maybe being a bit too slow? Do you think it's fine where it is? Just in general.
Well, as far as I know,
the maps are bigger, your character's slower. I think it's too slow. I don't mind it too much, but I think you should speed it up. If you want that big maps, I think you should speed it up. And you should obviously speed up the monsters as well. Like, that's why he said not in comparison to the monsters, because every time this has been brought up in the previous interviews, Jonathan has been very defensive about the fact that monsters need to be faster than the player, or some of the monsters need to be faster than the player, and some of them need to be slower, and some need to be as fast. Like, this is speeding up the entire game, not just the player.
no. And I could be wrong about this, but I, as far as I know, the baseline movement speed in PoE 1 and 2 is the same.
Yes, but the maps are much bigger in PoE 2, so you feel slower, right? It might be that the movement speed is the same, but the maps in PoE 1 are smaller. So it's like, yeah, okay, maybe we both move at 10 kilometers per hour, but you have 10 kilometers to move and I have 20. Like, it's going to take me longer, so I'm going to feel slower. It might not be, I'm not slower, but I'm going to finish my task slower. Right, so yeah. Oh, oops! What do we do?
Like, I don't believe it is actually different. The difference is in like the things you're doing, right? Like the skills that allow you to move all the time and all that stuff, right? As far as I'm aware. Now, as far as movement speed is concerned in general, I don't want to spoil anything, but like we are working on things around this. For 030, we do have ideas for what we want to do. I don't want to break the combat system. Like, if we just buffed movement speed for the player, like the baseline, it would break the combat system in a lot of ways. Like, we'd have to do a lot of stuff. There's like animations. It would be a huge deal.
Yeah.
But we have.
Can you just buff everything by 10%? Monsters, movement speed for the player. Movement speed for the monsters, movement speed for the player.
Have some ideas.
Wouldn't that be?
But we'll talk about those a little bit. Like just. Probably 030 announcement. I would say as well, we'll be talking about that. But yeah, we've got some ideas. Like I think that there is something we can improve here that will be the best of both worlds of still having combat mattering while still, like being something that can help players with this concern. So like there's stuff that we can do.
Shrinking the maps could also just do it.
But
so maybe something
I guess
that's
I wouldn't
like a little
really
bursty, right? It's not maybe tied to gear. It's just every so often you get a little dopamine rush.
So we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see about stuff like that.
Okay.
So I definitely understand the problem, right? Like, so in terms of tier 1 issues that we have that we want to address in 030, this is in the list, right? Like this problem
awesome.
that people have. Like, I mean, we've got our list of tier 1 issues that we're like, we can't release 030 without, like, even though I said we weren't locking features. I mean, some of the things that you see, some of these things we're like, here's the tier 1 issues
we're working on it.
This is one of them. This movement speed concern that people have is a concern. But as I said, I just don't want to ruin the combat system too much. So that's why we have to be a bit careful.
Okay. No,
I don't think you'd ruin it by just speeding up everything.
Swapping gears,
a little
Jonathan.
Bit. Not a lot.
You guys added a pretty cool item in 020 in the Grand Project Precursor tablet. And it allows you, if you use it in a tower, it allows you to go into any map node or in the radius of that tower. A very interesting person brought up the fact, maybe this is a little bit of an experiment to bring this as a core ability to towers. It makes Atlas traversal so much smoother. We can get to cool destinations faster, skip around to the maps we'd like to play. Is there any chance in your mind that this would go core?
I don't think that I want something like. I don't think I'd want that to be core to towers, but like, I guess if you're saying things like that, it sort of implies that you're not finding the things you want to find easily enough, which is the thing that I'd be looking to address with a concern like that. So that's kind of how I'd see that. Like, it's like if you feel like that's necessary, it's probably because there's something wrong with the way that the like the amount of stuff you're finding. So there's definitely something that we need to address there. Like, there are some concerns around the stuff for sure. I mean, one thing that we just actually, I don't know whether it was deployed or not. Maybe it might be in 021 actually. Because like right now there's this like thing where there's a horrible imbalance of what maps like some maps are way more common than others. You know, and this is something that we have a fix for. As I said, I wasn't sure whether or not it went out in a point release or whether or not it's a 021. I think it's in 021 actually.
I think it's coming in 021. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's in 021. So, you know, we're effectively making it so that like the maps are much more even. So like you won't see nearly as many like you know, I think it's hidden grottos, isn't it? The one that you know,
hidden grottos.
You get
yep.
Yeah, you get constantly. So yeah, like stuff like that, like will improve a lot. So I think that'll help as well. Like I think it really just comes down to balance of like when you find things, where you find them, that kind of stuff. Like to me, that's really what it is. And I guess it also comes down to sort of like one of the reasons, the other
Why is there a YouTube search bar?
reasons you might want to be like skipping more of the Atlas content is that you're not feeling like you're seeing what it is you want. And I guess that's another larger issue with towers as well.
I think another thing that people
one of the issues with towers is that all of the maps are just boring without you having a tower equipped on, like having a tower activated on them. It's like, who wants to do a fucking map with nothing on it? It's like the Atlas tree in PoE 1 does what towers do, which means it's active all the time in PoE 1, whereas in PoE 2 it's like, yeah, whenever you've done a fucking tower and then put in 3 tablets and then run one of the maps that are influenced by the tower, right? And preferably you want to do 2 towers so that you could do an overlap and hit the same thing twice at least, and then only run those maps, right? Like before the changes they made, it was a 3 tower overlap you wanted, right? Like that's the problem. Like you just take the functionality the towers have now and put them back into a fucking Atlas. There you go. You fix the problem. Now people wouldn't mind doing the maps because they actually matter. And then you can do something cool with the towers.
Really would like is more just player agency, right? To be able to, like you kind of said, run the maps that they'd like to run with the mechanics that they'd like to run. And the grand project tablet allows that, right? If you see a breach and a ritual and everything on your favorite map layout, but it's on the opposite side of the tower and you got to run 10 maps to get there, you know, it kind of is a feels bad moment. But just more like...
There's actually so that is a broader issue that I've noticed with the current way the Atlas works, which is not something that we initially... It's more subtle. It's actually comes down a little bit to the overlapping tower thing as well. And it's only sort of a realization that we came to recently. So... How can I put this together? Like, okay, so there's this issue of like, if you know in advance that something isn't the best,
yeah, you don't want to run it, then
it feels bad to have to kind of go through it like already knowing that it's not the thing you wanted. And so what I'm talking about this is like, okay, and this is something that the old Atlas, like in PoE 1 Atlas didn't have, that PoE 2 Atlas does have, that's like, you know, just sort of think about it. It's like, okay, so the overlapping towers thing is a great example, right? It's like, if you know that overlapping towers is the best thing, then every time you see a non-overlapping tower, you're like, oh, I have to just get through this so I can get to the next overlapping tower. And like, let's just say, for example, and like, this is a terrible idea, so I'm not actually going to do this, but I'm just like, let's just say, for example, that we had a mechanic where, and I wouldn't do this for like 10 reasons, but that like when you run a map, there's a random chance that it turns into a tower, right? Let's just say, for example, we had that mechanic. What that would mean is that now you at any time could get the best thing. So you don't feel bad about running maps that you know can never be the best, because at any time the maps could be the best. And this comes down, I think, to the sort of core of like AIPG itemization as well, where it's like one of the reasons why it's good is because, like, you know, the next rock you turn over could contain the mirror drop, right? So it's like you don't feel bad about killing monsters, even if, like, you know, like, assuming we get everything right, that is, you know, because it's like, okay, there could be a good thing like right around the next corner. It's like if you knew that every monster that you killed was going to drop nothing. Like, let's say, so here's another example of a thing that would be similar, right? Let's just say that all the monsters in a map drop nothing except the boss, right? Let's just say that that's what you had.
Okay.
If you had that, killing all those monsters would feel like a chore, because like there was no chance of that ever returning anything for you, right? You're just like, I just want to get through this to get to the boss, right? And so you've kind of got a similar thing going on, but on like a higher level. With the Atlas system, where it's like, you know, that this part isn't the best, therefore, like, I feel bad having to grind through it. Like, if they had a chance of being the best, it would be fine. So I feel like we need to find a way to make that more the case. And like, I was sort of discussing, like, as a random example that's kind of a bit related, although not exactly the same, of like, in PoE 1, any map could just randomly spawn a breach,
Yes.
for example.
Yes.
And PoE 2, when you don't have one. You know what I mean? So it's kind of there's this so like that sort of element sort of like has a thing there. So there is something to this, and like I can see that there's a problem. I just need to sort of work out exactly how we're going to. And the things that as I said, the thing I just said there before, like that would solve the problem. I just hate it for 10 other reasons. I'm just sort of putting that out there as like an example. To evoke the idea of how it would feel to you if that was how it worked. You know what I mean? So like that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about how to sort of resolve this problem. So we do need to do something. Like I like a lot of what the tower mechanic does, but like there's still not something quite right about it. Like there's some stuff we have to do, and I also really love that sort of feeling of exploration thing going on. But
yeah, the towers are awesome.
I guess something we didn't realize is like when you can see things in advance, you have to be really careful that you don't let the amount of importance that can have be too high, because that undermines the feeling of everything else. So like that's kind of like a thing.
Oh, I don't like that. That sounds like they're going to nerf the mechanics and buff the baseline, so that the mechanics now don't matter. Like that sounds bad.
We need to think about. So yeah, there's certainly some stuff to think about here. We need to work out what exactly we're going to do about it.
All right, yeah, I think you're touching on the exact feeling I had like when going back to Path of Exile 1. And I always had that feeling of surprise or mystery going into all the maps, and that's just not in PoE 2. So I'm glad that it's on your guys' radar. That's awesome.
Right. Well, I mean, in 0-0, we did intend to improve that situation by adding more random things. And so having more random things that aren't just the leagues is also a way to sort of improve that. And so 0-2 helped with that to some degree. But I do think that there's still like an issue around that to think about.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Let's see. I know we're running short on time. I know you have to run in about 25 minutes. So I'm a little bit curious on, let's see here. I'd love to touch on races for just a moment, since you guys are running quite a few of them. Okay. So they're obviously back for Path of Exile 2. You guys have been running them pretty consistently. I'm curious, is there anything in particular you guys are trying to glean while watching these races? Like, are they influencing any balance decisions, or are they showing you, oh, well, this part of the campaign could be improved in a certain way? I'm really curious to hear. Or are they just pure for entertainment?
I wouldn't say that we learn much about things from that perspective beyond just about what races are doing, right? There's obviously changes we could make for races in particular. It doesn't influence too much about the rest of the campaign, I would say, just because like the things that they're doing are really just quite outside the norm of what normal players experience. So yeah, it really is more of just a fun thing we enjoy doing. That like that's more of what it's about. I wouldn't say that there's like a kind of development reason to run them per se.
Okay. Yeah. All right. This is a very early game question, Jonathan. So and the guy I'll use as an example is my dad. So a lot of very new players to ARPGs, they started playing PoE 2 as like their first ARPG ever. And a lot of them are unaware of the importance of certain items in the game, like crafting currency, right? A lot of people will just hoard it, even though the currency says, hey, use me on items, right? Would you be open to the idea of like maybe doing a very short quest or tutorial in Act 1 to put people on this path? Because once I showed him how to do it, Jonathan, dude, he's ground more than I have in PoE 2 this season.
I actually already had this idea, and it's already something that we've got in the works. So awesome. I just want to show everyone because a major experience a major difference in experience is just transmuting your weapon. If you transmute your weapon, you're going to have a way different time than if you don't know to do that. So that's something we got to explicitly say, okay, here is a quest where it's going to drop a transmute, it's going to tell you use your weapon, cool. Actually just really make sure that new players know to do that.
Okay, that makes me so happy to hear.
They kind of have to make a because if you just make a thing, right? Like, oh, here's a weapon, transmute your weapon, boom. Here's a weapon, augment your weapon. Or sorry, here's an augment your weapon. Here's a regal your weapon. Here's an exalt your weapon, right? Like, here's a Valorb, corrupt your weapon, right? Like, they have to be like, okay, so there's this. You're going to get a lot of these, right? Like, it could just say, you're going to get a lot of these. Use them completely freely. Do not save them. You will get plenty, right? That would be transmute and augments, right? And then there'll be regals. It's like, these you use on something that looks like it's going to be good, and you want to just take it to the next level and see if it's going to be better, because it will be better, right? Like, you don't use this on, a bad weapon. You use this on a weapon that's okay, that's pretty good, right? Like, because you won't get that many of these. And then Exile is like, you use this on a yellow item that is already good, and you're going to use or might use if it rolls a certain thing. You use these a little bit more sparingly, right? And then Varlob, you already have a good weapon. Because this might ruin it, right? Like, you need to have that sort of explanation, because otherwise they're not going to get it.
For a lot of the new people coming to the game. That'll be great for like 1.0's launch and all that too. Cool. Okay, back to item questions. So, Path of Exile 2, unique items. A lot of the items right now, they fall off as you go into endgame and you scale your character, but it's not because they aren't cool. A lot of them are super cool, but they have no way to scale, past a certain threshold in the game. Are you guys okay with the number of uniques that are in the game, are cool, but just become a little blip in a character's journey? Or are you looking into really reinvigorating some of these items?
I would say, I mean, look, there are some that we definitely need to make more powerful, but I would say that like a lot of the reason is just because we started working on the lower level ones and we're only getting, like only since 010's launch, I would say, have we really been focusing on the more high level stuff. And there's more of that stuff coming. I mean, we have more uniques coming, in 021. Like the focus on unique design now is that sort of in-game, like later on stuff that you can use viably on a character going forward. So like that is definitely the case. At the same time, there's a bunch of stuff out there that people would use if it ever dropped, right? So like it's funny because like we were actually looking at because Mark and I actually did this exercise recently together. We're like, okay, so like what's the stuff I'm excited to drop, right? And like we started looking through some uniques and like we were just like, man, we forgot we even added this, right? Like it's so rare. There's like 12 Astromentises that have dropped on the live realm. You know what I mean? It's like
well,
no, that's not actually accurate. There were 12 in trade. There were like 12 in trade at the time that we looked. It's like man, like okay, we worked out. I actually worked out recently because I've actually been recently writing simulator so I can like more easily work out some of what's going. Like we have like things we can do to work this out, but like it wasn't easy enough. I want to be able to just at an instant's notice as we're changing balance numbers, like the result on the item drops are. So I started writing a tool for that, and I found out that like an Astromentis will drop every 45,000 divines, and it's like okay, like
yeah, that's out.
It's like how many years do you have to wait?
That's crazy.
And it's like, okay, we're just like we're not in the right universe here as far as like the drop rate of something like that. So yeah, they effectively do not exist as far as a
475,000 divines dropped. So every time a monster drops a divine, you'd have to do that 475,000 times. Jesus.
Is concerned.
So these drop rate buffs are pretty substantial. Then I didn't ascertain this.
Oh yeah, they are. They're very, very, very substantial. I mean, look, it's like I think at the trade at the time we saw one was like selling for like 600 divines, and I'm like, this is actually technically cheap compared to the drop rate of this thing. I was like, people don't even know when this drops, so they're just setting it at like a thing. So yeah, there's
600 divine for an Astromentis. Oh, that's a bargain. Like this is like 1,000th of the price.
that needs to change, obviously, right?
Okay.
And like one of the key actual differences, and I get this is a little bit inside of things we don't normally talk about, but whatever, I'll talk about it anyway. So like one of the changes that PoE 2 had that I think that enriched, but we're actually going to change this back, and this is like a major thing that will improve things, is in PoE 2 the chance of a unique dropping is scaled by the chance of the drop pool of that type of item dropping. So what I mean by that is like unique amulets are like rarer because they're an amulet, but in PoE 1 this was not the case. Like all the uniques were in one pool that then like they all had an equal chance. I mean not equal, right? There's rare and there's common ones, but being an amulet didn't affect the chance for it to drop, right? In PoE 2 the reason why Astromentis is like so completely ridiculous is because amulets being a rarer like thing just in the base pool anyway means that the unique version of the amulet is now incredibly rare, like to a point where they might as well not exist. So what you'll see at, like as a starting point is that jewelry that are uniques will be way more common than they currently are, just because we're now putting them back into the regular pool with the other uniques so that they can roll together. And so that's like an example of the kind of thing that will improve it. And that's like like some of the stuff just doesn't have an opportunity to be a chase item you're even thinking about because it's so rare. You just don't expect it. It's like not even a thing, right? I mean, it's like effectively Mirror of Calandra tier at this point, and that's not what we really intended, and something that is going to change. So,
That's wild to hear. Hey, Astromenta stonks. Okay, here we go. Right now. Awesome. Maybe I'll find one. That's cool. Okay, so a little bit of a focus now as we get to the final section of the interview, dude, on the future of PoE 2. So just onward. One thing I'm really curious about, and I think a lot of other people are as well, many ARPG veterans have been conditioned to view the campaign as a blip in the journey. You know, you start there and you get through it as fast as possible. Obviously, Path of Exile 2 has been trying to change that. There has been tremendous discourse on this fact, you know, in 0.1 and in 0.2. I'm curious, taking all this and looking at it and looking toward the future, maybe even Acts 4, 5, and 6, how do you see the Path of Exile 2 campaign evolving?
Well, I would say that most of the stuff around this really comes down to the kind of like play speed concerns that people have. So it's like, if we can address that, I don't think people are going to be concerned about like campaign length anymore. Like, I would say that like it's not necessarily the case that PoE 2 is that much longer, if it even is that longer at all, than PoE 1. If you would think of it in terms of like total distance you need to actually walk and number of monsters you need to kill, it's just that, you know, like it's just the pace is the concern. So if that is higher, or if like there's ways to be that faster in that way, then I think that those kind of concerns will definitely go away or down significantly at the very least. At the same time, it's not helping that cruel difficulty exists, right? Like that's certainly something that is like makes the experience.
I find it very hard to believe that the areas in PoE 1, well, there's 10 acts, so yeah, maybe there's only 6. So yeah, those 4 extra acts, I guess. It still feels, whenever I'm thinking about going through PoE 1 campaign, it's like, yeah, okay, I mean, that'll take me a bit. But when I think about the PoE 2 campaign, it's like, that's a lot. And it's a lot of fucking walking. And in PoE 1, you have to backtrack a bit, right? Like, you have to go there, then go there, then there, go there, right? Like, I guess maybe only I have to backtrack because I suck. But there's revisiting zones in PoE 1. There isn't really that in PoE 2. Except for one place, I think, as far as I remember. Okay.
It's worse, and like it's not like we want cruel difficulty to be there, right? Like it's a compromise that exists until the point we can get more content in. So like basically once we can remove that, I think as well that will help a lot. So that I think it's really the combination of those things that are the primary reason why you know why there's a lot of concern over this. And so effectively, so long as we can fix both of those problems, then I think that stuff will be a lot better.
Okay, no announcements here, but there was an interview you did for 020 about Acts 4, 5, and 6, and how it was a little confusing, like the answer. Do you think that they'll be coming one by one, or do you think they'll all be dropping at the same time? I don't know if you know the interview I'm referring to or not.
I just don't. I unfortunately don't want to announce anything.
Oh, you don't.
You'll just have to wait for that one.
Okay, that's totally fine. All right, I get it. Okay, in the future, now you touched on some archetypes not being fully explored right now, and you might actually be buffing stuff up in this league. Is fire on your radar at all? Because compared to a cold and lightning, it just feels a little lackluster. And I don't know if you think that's
I think it does in PoE 1 as well.
Or damage or anything.
I mean, okay, so
the biggest problem with fire is the fucking debuff that it does is just more damage, right? Like it's just fire bleed. And I know it isn't, but like it's just fire poison or fire bleed, right? Like whereas with shock you get a damage amp, and with cold you get a defensive layer, and it's the same in PoE 1. It's like if you do fire damage, you get more fire damage. It's like, I mean, I guess you could. What's it called? I guess you could compare it to shock, but shock scales your damage. Ignite just does more of it. It's like it's not an extra level of scaling, and I'm not sure how that works out exactly, right? Because yeah, sure, if Ignite is 50% of the damage I deal and I deal 100 damage, then Ignite is 150 damage, right? Like, and if a shock makes me do 50% more damage and I do 100 damage, then it's 150 damage. It's the same shit. But I'm just not sure exactly that's how it works, but maybe. Because the thing shock also does is it lets you I don't know. I just Ignite just it just always felt like a little bit like Fire Bleed, and it just feels like you're kind of missing an avenue of scaling that it on its own, because of the way scaling interacts, just it doesn't do as much. But maybe I'm wrong.
I definitely would agree that lightning is in a better place than cold and fire. I don't fully know if I would agree that cold and fire are necessarily like that far apart from each other. This actually comes down, I think, to the thing I was touching on earlier about like the ability for a skill to scale. Like lightning, just kind of like when you're designing a lightning skill, like it bouncing around between enemies is kind of like just one of those things that tends to happen, right? Because it's lightning, right? Obviously it should do that. And so what that's kind of led to is like when you're not thinking too hard about scaling, lightning just sort of naturally scales more because it can hit more targets, because it kind of auto targets and bounces. You get those kind of skills that allow it to kind of get that kind of in-game clear ability. And fire and cold, it's like I think we have to be a bit more explicit in order to make that happen. So I would say that's kind of the reason. I think, like, I mean, obviously there's going to be balanced numbers and there's going to be a million other things and they're unique and there's like 20 other reasons why this can matter. But I think just even just from the base level in terms of scaling, like lightning just as a design space tends to scale more even when you're not thinking about it. And then the other two, yeah, not so much. So I think that
fire and cold is also very similar, right? Like it's obviously two ends of the opposite ends of the spectrum of the same thing, right? So it makes sense. But it's like, how are you gonna make a cold clearing ability? Oh, you're gonna give it AoE, it's gonna go right? Like, how are you gonna do a fire really? Oh, it's gonna go right? Like, it's just gonna be AoE. Whereas lightning, well, I guess cold, a lot of cold stuff penetrates, but lightning, I mean, what is chaining if not just a better penetrate, right? Like, if it penetrates, you just hit something behind it. If you chain, you just chain to what's behind it, or to the side, or like chain is just a better penetrate, right? And I think it's gotta be hard to differentiate a fire skill from a cold spell, skill, whatever. Fire and cold, because they're so similar, man. It's just visuals, and then yeah, the debuffs, I guess. But in terms of, oh yeah, you want to make a blizzard? Oh right, cool, big AoE. You want to make a firestorm? Oh right, cool, big AoE. It's like, the fireball explodes, right? But the but so does the frost orb, right? Like it. The only way and then you're like, okay, but cold can then be a persistent area. Well, fire, it burns in a persistent area as well. Like, it's the same shit. Like, lightning is cool.
That's kind of part of why lightning in particular is kind of like, ended up being something that has got more of that going on.
Lightning and cold have like utility too, with like chill, freeze, electrocute.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
I mean, look, fire sort of has its whole burning thing. I mean, look, the whole difference between damage types things is also something that I think that we didn't explore enough yet in the unique space as well. So what I mean by that is, I don't think that conversion in PoE 2 matters that much, because like there isn't enough kind of going on that like allows that to matter, if you know what I'm saying. So like it's kind of like that kind of stuff. I think like we need to like more mechanics, and uniques, like more sort of things in the game will kind of hopefully address that and like make those elements like matter more in terms of what makes them unique and different, because of like what's available to use in the rest of your toolbox.
Would you guys consider support gems to convert elemental damage at any point?
I mean, it's not like, I mean, the thing is, right now, I don't think the conversion is really that valuable thing. Like, it's not, like, I don't think there's enough kind of going on. Then it's like, quintessentially, like, okay, so Acolyte of Chalula, for example, right? Like, the Chaos conversion is just, like, not really valuable like it should be. And it's just because, like, there's not really anything about that that's kind of, like, important enough. So, it's like, when this was designed, it's like the assumption was, oh, like converting to chaos is valuable, right? Like it was valuable in PoE 1, therefore it's valuable here, but it's kind of not because like of the other tools that are available. And so then it kind of ends up making that class like not as cool as it should be for that reason. So it's like then we either have to think, okay, do we need to be adding tools that are going to make that more, or do we need to be adjusting how that class works? Like, we obviously have to work this out.
Both,
like make some other changes potentially. But it's like that kind of stuff. It's like sometimes there is just PoE1 brain going on in terms of like, oh, like this is valuable in PoE1, therefore it must be valuable in PoE2. Like, you sometimes don't even think that fully through, right? Because you like to even understand why or it is or is not kind of depends on a full understanding of like every other, the whole unique metagame. The thing is like tomorrow a unique could come out. I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying tomorrow a unique could come out that like that makes Acolyte of Chalia suddenly amazing, right? It's like it's completely down to like the context in which it exists in. So what I'm saying is like, yeah, it's
going to come out next week, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to promise anything. I don't actually know for sure the case, but what I'm saying is like there's that element going on. So
okay.
That I would say is part of the problem. Like, we just need to make sure that we're like understanding a bit more about like what about. But look, it's easy once you've got players playing it and you can see what they're doing and you can see that they haven't found anything, right? It's okay, well, if they haven't found anything yet, that probably means they're not going to. We probably have to like actually come up with something to juice this particularly, whether that's the class or whether that's unique or some other element, to make that possible. We just need to sort of make that happen. And I'd say conversion in general, but Acolyte of Chalia in particular, like has like problems around that.
So you guys, you're segueing perfectly into a rapid fire question. Acolyte of Chayula, we have like 23 Acolyte players out there, and they really want some love. You guys aware? Is that maybe one of the candidates for a buff in?
Oh, definitely for sure. Yeah,
it is okay.
For sure.
Ooh, I want to play Acolyte of Chayula. It's so cool. I want to see the voice line. I hear the voice line
questions. How about let's do one more endgame question, then I got a set of really quick questions to answer. Okay. So the infinitely expanding Atlas, as more people have played it, like I said, 6 months, going into like 1.0, whenever that comes out, are you confident this is going to be the system going into 1.0?
Well, I guess what I would say about that is basically, I mean, we sort of covered this before, right? Like where I was discussing the thing with the towers overlapping and all those various things. Yeah. That kind of really comes down, all comes into it. So what I would say is like, I don't think we've found it quite yet.
Okay.
I hope that I personally love the whole infinite expanding Atlas thing, like as an idea, and like I want to make sure that can happen. But obviously, like nothing, if it doesn't, if we can't make the end game awesome, then we will change it, right? Like everything's like that.
Final.
Now, as I said, I think we've got a lot more to.
I think they should just keep the fucking expanding Atlas because it's fucking cool. You travel along the world, right? But just take the passives off the towers and give them. Put them in the tree. Just give me the PoE1 tree. Just give me that. And then you have the towers, and they can add other shit. Like, they can add additional things. Right? Like, maybe that's where you get some of the effects. Or maybe you just add, like, little quality of life things. Or maybe you just... I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me whether or not the towers actually just make it more rewarding. They can. Like... That's fine, but when they add content, it's like, yeah, if you haven't used the tower, then the map is not rewarding at all. And I know for a lot of the like the juicers and stuff, that's the same thing, right? Like, so I don't know. I think the towers are cool. I think you get to a tower so you can get to see more is cool, and maybe that's the purpose of them then, right? Like maybe that's just what they do, and they just reveal a larger part of the map so you can better plan your journey, or you can look, oh wait, there's a unique map over here, right? Like. I think that shit is so cool. I like traveling along the map. It's just, I don't like that the towers are my Atlas tree. I don't like that.
Try before we have to change how that is. But, that it's like nothing is sacred ultimately if it means getting in the way of like, something being good. So, yeah, like I want it to be there. We'll see what happens.
Okay, cool. All right, lots of rapid fire questions here, and then we'll close out with a question that I'm sure that you'll answer. You won't dodge me out of it at all. Okay, so div cards. We saw mention the winner in all three races is going to be able to make one.
Yeah.
Are they coming soon? And if they are, any changes from PoE1? Are they going to work the same?
Pretty soon. Fundamentally, they work similarly, but we do have some just like stuff to kind of make it a little bit like. I mean,
you can tell me. It's okay. Nobody's listening.
It's like there were some just cases in PoE1 where you kind of had like some of the things you could pick kind of like we're a bit silly, like in a way. Not okay. That's not quite getting to it. It's like I don't want just like 20 copies of div cards that are effectively ultimately doing the same thing, just because they got slightly different variations, same like exact stuff. So we're gonna control that a little bit more this time to kind of make it so that like, okay, if you're the div card that's this, then like that's your thing, and like no one else is gonna be stomping on that. You don't kind of have like a billion ways to all just give you a like a mage blood.
Okay.
Like in PoE 1, you know what I mean? Like, so we want to just do some adjustments there, but that's kind of more of a thing around, like, the people making the div cards rather than the thing around actually finding them. So I don't have anything to talk about on that side yet, but yeah, it won't be too far away. We do have some pretty nice looking art. That's pretty cool. So,
is it going to be different from Path of Exile 1, like brand new art for PoE 2 for div cards?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the plan to still allow players to log into separate accounts via couch co-op? Because I know that was originally
that
the
is
intention.
the plan. That will probably be the thing that the console guys do after they've done the ability to transition from mouse and keyboard to controller on the fly, like on the fly.
Seamlessly,
so once they're done with that, we'll probably work on the couch co-op different account thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I've heard chat is going wild about this, and I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, but I'm still curious. Any more options for armor or defensive layers related to it, potentially coming in 0.20 or 0.3?
I don't have anything to say about it at this point. Like, well, this is one of those this is probably going to be another freaking multi-day conversation with Mike to work out the details of. So once PoE 1's out, we'll probably have a long discussion. I'm certain about. Certainly something that people are very keen for.
Okay. Any timeline on adding passive tree layouts to the game? We know that those are coming in PoE 2. Any timeline on those?
Oh, you mean
the pathing? The pathing.
The thing where yeah. You know what? I need to follow up on that again. I actually don't know what the timeline was on that one. I need to go talk to the UI guys about when that will be. Hopefully, I mean, look, I want to get it in, so it won't be too far away.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to add an option to disable auto-targeting either as a global setting or on a skill-by-skill basis? I've heard some people complaining about that a little bit.
So
auto-targeting.
I have a huge thing about this.
Not a rapid-fire question.
But it's like, this is not a rapid-fire question. It's a very complicated thing. Okay, so like, because I've got like crazy theories about why this is suddenly an issue and like all these other things. Like, it's like a whole... So because like, okay, PoE 2 and PoE 1 targeting is identical. There is no difference between these, right? And targeting in PoE 1 was not a big thing that people were worried about. Like, this just wasn't a thing. And so I'm like,
what's happening is we're watching the interview, and then we'll go back to Oblivion. There is going to be a PoE 1 patch coming out. They're going to announce it on Thursday, so we're going to watch that as well. Maybe I'll do an extra stream. I don't know when it is exactly. But that means that we're probably going to play a couple of weeks of PoE 1, like from the June 13th, if I'm interested at least. But we'll see. But yeah, for now, there's like this interview with PoE 2 stuff, and I'm almost done with it. But it's been fun listening to. There's a lot of cool things, and he's saying most of the right things, so that makes me optimistic for the future.
Why is it different in PoE 2? Because people have been saying, okay, it's like there's a lot of people talking about parallax error, right? So what we're talking about here is like targeting is relative to your feet, right? Mm-hmm. And like to me, that makes total sense because I'm like, okay, like when you click, that's exactly where you move to. When you right click, that's exactly where the projectile flies over, right? Like it seems to make sense to me. And so I always assumed that this was how every ARPG worked. Like I actually just assumed that. Like I didn't actually know, and I never really thought about it before because it was just so obvious to me that that's how it should be. But then when people started posting about this, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to try out just like a bunch of other games and just see, like really look at them, how they work. And I noticed that like, okay, the first one I tried was D4, and I'm like, okay, they actually do this differently. They have it so that when you right click, the projectile exactly moves to the mouse. And to me, I'm like, this is insane actually, because like when you click in the location, you run to a different, like if you click to your right, you'll run right. But if you right click there and fire a projectile, you'll fire diagonally downwards. And I'm like, okay, like, and yet this is more intuitive to people. And so I'm starting to think like, okay, well, at least to some people, right? So I'm starting to think like, okay, well, what's the difference here?
Wait,
and then I started thinking like, a big change in PoE 1 and 2 was WASD. And when you're using click to move, every time you click, it's like reinforcing the fact that everything's relative to your feet, because it's like that's where you move to, right? So you're like click, you're moving there every single time. Every single click is like reinforcing this like way of thinking about where things are relative to your character.
Right.
But when you're in WSD, oftentimes you are effectively just saying, I want to fire that way. You know, like this is the direction I want to fire in. So maybe you like internally in your head, you just sort of think about it differently. So if you're like, to me, it working the other way is actually unintuitive. And I actually tried in D4, like, okay, if I like don't click on the monster, if I like am specifically trying to click on the ground to hit the monster, and I just play like that for a little while, like what do I end up with? And I actually was missing all the time because once again, it's not intuitive to me. But I'm like, okay, but if like one of the biggest other RPGs works this way, it does seem reasonable for us to have an option to change it to work that way. And so then I started looking into these other games, and so like I checked Last Epoch. That one, somewhat inexplicably, seems to look at your knee height, and I don't know why, rather than the chest height. That's kind of weird. So I don't know what's going on with that. What's it called?
Torchlight.
Maybe. Sorry.
Don't understand what he's saying
Infinite?
here.
I don't know.
One was not a big thing that people were worried about. Like this just wasn't a thing. And so I'm like, why is it different in PoE 2? Because people have been saying, okay, it's like there's a lot of people talking about parallax error, right? So what we're talking about here is like targeting is relative to your feet, right? And like to me, that makes total sense because I'm like, okay, like when you click, that's exactly where you move to. When you right click, that's exactly where the projectile flies over, right? Like it seems to make sense to me. And so I always assumed that this was how every ARPG worked. Like I actually just assumed that. Like I didn't actually know, and I never really thought about it before because it was just so obvious to me that that's how it should be. But then when people started posting about this, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to try out just like a bunch of other games and just see, like really look at them, how they work. And I noticed that like, okay, the first one I tried was D4, and I'm like, okay, they actually do this differently. They have it so that when you right click, the projectile exactly moves to the mouse. And to me, I'm like, this is insane actually, because like when you click in the location, you run to a different, like if you click to your right, you'll run right. But if you right click there and fire a projectile, you'll fire diagonally downwards. And I'm like, okay, like, and yet this is more intuitive to people. And so I'm starting to think like, okay, well, at least to some people, right? So I'm starting to think like, okay, well, what's the difference here? And then I started thinking like,
wait, what?
A big change in PoE 1 and 2 was WASD. And when you're using click to move, every time you click, it's like reinforcing the fact that everything's relative to your feet, because it's like that's where you move to, right? So you're like click, you're moving there every single time. Every single click is like reinforcing this like way of thinking about where things are relative to your character. Right. But when you're in WSD, oftentimes you are effectively just saying, I want to fire that way. You know, like this is the direction I want to fire in. So maybe you like internally in your head, you just sort of think about it differently. So if you're like, to me, it working the other way is actually unintuitive. And I actually tried in D4, like, okay, if I like don't click on the monster, if I like am specifically trying to click on the ground to hit the monster, and I just play like that for a little while, like what do I end up with? And I actually was missing all the time because once again, it's not intuitive to me. But I'm like, okay, but if like one of the biggest other RPGs works this way, it does seem reasonable for us to have an option to change it to work that way. And so then I started looking into these other games, and so like
I don't know what he's saying.
I checked Last Epoch. That one somewhat inexplicably seems to look at your knee height, and I don't know why, rather than the chest height.
I don't understand what he's saying, but I have been frustrated with targeting in PoE 2, where I felt like I shouldn't be missing, and I was. But I don't understand the whole, like, he said that when you click in D4, then you'd shoot diagonally downwards. I don't, this is weird. My brain too small.
Like,
I'm stupid.
So I don't know what's going on with that. What's it called?
Torchlight. Maybe.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
Torchlight Infinite. I don't know.
Torchlight Infinite.
No
that's chest height. No Rest for the Wicked. I actually didn't check that one.
Okay.
But I checked. Oh God, what's it called? Whatever. There was another one I checked that was also feet. Like it is a variety, right?
Okay.
The game. But okay. But it's like Diablo 4 is obviously like a game that tons of people played. You know, you got a lot of people coming from that to us. like this fundamental thing working differently is something that can matter. So basically what I'm saying is we are actually looking into having an option for this. Whether or not it's the default or not is going to be an argument. You know, like that's a question. And I think that and the reason why I bring this up, right, when you just talk about the whole disabling the auto targeting thing, is because there's a very specific and this might even be hard to explain without a picture, so I might have to hold this coffee cup up here.
Oh, here we go.
As a visual aid here. So okay, we're getting right into it now. Basically, okay. So if you are targeting from your chest to chest, then basically, when you move off, like if this is the bounding box of a monster, then as soon as you move the cursor off that, then the location on the ground that is nearest to that will be closer in terms of like the angle that your projectile would fire to the like location, like you move a small amount of distance of the mouse and you get a small amount of rotation of the of like where you're going to aim.
Right.
But using the system from your feet, it means that like when you move off a monster, that change in angle is quite a lot larger, because if you move off from here to here, it's like there's quite a big snap that happens. And so I think that when people are talking about wanting to disable this, it's because when they slightly click off the monster, it's resulting in an outsized amount of difference in angle of actual that you're attacking with. And so that sort of then means you're like, your instinct without sort of thinking about it too hard is going to be, oh, I just want to disable that, right? Rather than it just being that, like, if the 2 points were closer together, then that wouldn't be a concern that you would have. So as I said, I want to try just first, like, okay, let's just try with this thing to do that, and then we'll see how that goes. And then like there might be a world where I'd consider having it so that you can disable name locking as well, but I don't think that's going to be a complaint. Like it never was in PoE 1. The moment that you don't have that problem, and I said, I think in PoE 1 the reason why it wasn't because people were so conditioned to how it worked from the way you're clicking to move. So I think it really is WASD that introduced us to that issue. But yeah, anyway, that's a long rant. It's like a whole thing that we're looking into at the moment, and that's what I have to say about that. But
this really proves that whenever players are like, this is just a small thing, right? A rapid fire question is like, no, this is massive. And then other things where we're like, oh, that has to be looked. No, that's just whatever.
Quite a lot of like thinking about it and working it out to sort of see what the issue was there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Diablo 4. We'll look out for it. That's pretty cool. Okay. So on consoles, the Hideout music player doesn't work after being bought. Any idea if there's a fix? Like people apparently have been reporting
honestly, like that was not on my radar.
Oh.
Go like immediately and just ask someone to see why that is.
We want to hear Camille's
there's almost
bangers.
certainly going to be a bug in the issue tracker. There's almost certainly a bug in the issue tracker sitting there about that, and I just need to say that that's kind of unacceptable that doesn't work.
Awesome. And then one little quality of life feature before the silly question. Some people have difficulty reading text in chat in game. Is there an opportunity to perhaps add some options like an opacity slider on it instead of being all or nothing?
So we for like a long time have been wanting to do like a full chat revamp. And the problem then has been that because we've got that in the like what we want to do, it means that every time someone suggests like a little thing, they're like, oh, but we should just wait to do that for the whole huge chat revamp. And I just need to actually make sure the chat revamp happens so that, because we want to add more options and things and like have a bunch more stuff going on with that. So but basically before release, definitely we will have a chat revamp, and that'll like a lot of those kinds of problems we can just fix.
All right, awesome. One more Path of Exile related question, and one that is unrelated unless maybe it inspires you. Anybody in the office playing Expedition 33? I have to ask. It's the only game that's taken me away from PoE 2, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, certainly. It's pretty popular. I played it. I kind of like, I fell off right after the end of Act 1.
Really?
Not to spoil anything, but there was something that happened there that kind of, for some reason, just kind of made me go, I don't know. Like, it just kind of, maybe a bit unhappy now. People tell me that I really should keep going because there's a lot more cool stuff, and so I hopefully I will get time to do that. But and then Doom came out, and then there was that whole thing, and like so I kind of got knocked off again. But there's lots of people around the office who are loving it.
Cool. All right, so I know why you fell off, and it tells me a lot about your personality, Jonathan. So everybody can no spoilers in the chat, guys. No spoilers. But cool. All right. Last question before we send you off, man. Thank you for staying a few minutes over. Okay. Jonathan, I duped myself into thinking the druid was coming into Dawn of the Hunt. I was like completely blinders on. Everyone's like, you're wrong, you're wrong. No, the druid's coming. The huntress is coming. I know it was originally supposed to like release with the huntress, and you don't need to get into timelines with the druid. I'm curious, can you reveal what kind of happened there? Was there like I heard something about animation snafus. Was it a balance concern? Like, what's happening?
It just wasn't ready. That's all I can say.
Wasn't ready.
It just wasn't ready.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay. Are bear and wolf forms still planned? Those two?
Well, you will have to find out.
Okay. Well, I have a few more things, but I don't want to go over time, man. Thank you so much for giving me an hour and a half of your day. I know that you were booked literally the entire week except for this 90-minute window. So I really appreciate it. I do. So
no problem.
I wish you luck with the Path of Exile 1 League. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before?
Oh, not really. I mean, yeah, that's great. It's a great interview. Okay. So, thanks very much. And, all right. Yeah, I'll see you again next time.
All right. Definitely, Jonathan. Have a great one. Talk to you later.
Cool. All right. That was pretty good. That was really good. That was really good. Hopefully, it'll all be great.